Hello guys, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was found by Tsuba Ninja and entered the Chunin exam against Konoha? If you enjoy this video then please like, share and do comment, and also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. So let us start the story.
When he awoke, it was to a grassy field and nothingness. Where am I? He thought groggily, trying to clear his head. Wait, he remembered a song. It had been really pretty and he had wanted to get closer to the source. Was that why he was here? He sat up. The sky was blue and birds were chirping in the trees. Hey, something whizzed out of one of the nearest branches and he jerked back. A piece of fruit? You're cramping my style. Huh? Don't hum me. Who are you and what are you doing here? The voice was young but not young enough to be a child's. Me, I'm Ba. I don't care, just get lost will you, or I'll put a kunai in your foot. That did it. Suddenly the first boy grabbed the piece of fruit that had, he remembered, hit him in the head earlier and woke him up. Bouncing it in his hand a moment, he hurled it up at the tree. There was a thwack as something was hit and another body fell. I'll get you for that. That was when the boy who dropped from the tree stopped, and was looking at the stranger in a completely different light. What the heck are you? He asked, analyzing the first boy up and down, then staring behind him. What? The first boy turned his head and shrugged shoulder. Looks like a tail, I guess. And is it? Are they supposed to be there? The first boy shrugged. I have no idea. There was a crack and a bright light overhead as the boy sat up. He looked behind him. No tails to be seen. His head hurt a bit and it felt like he had been running for ages. It was raining and he had been asleep in a pile of mud. Just as he was about to stand, something long and sharp was thrown his way. He managed to dodge as multiple attacks came at him, and looked around wildly to see who had thrown the weapons. Hikari, you moron, stop throwing those. It was a female voice followed by a loud thud like someone being punched. Ouch. He doesn't even have a hit 8. Well, he looked like a threat to me. Oh, shut up, you just want a reason to throw kunai at someone. Hello? The muddied boy's voice was a bit off. Who's there? Ninja. The name came to his mind and he felt himself go on guard. Yeah, he remembered what those were, and they were dangerous. There was silence from the trees beyond as a voice spoke. State your name and what you're doing in Yuru country. Huh? He's an idiot, a complete baka. Hey. The young man had just about had enough of this. A moment later he had jumped from the opening in the forest, to in front of the two arguing young ninja. Gah, not a threat, Soryu? Who the heck are you guys? The boy said. He was hanging upside down from a branch above them. He didn't quite know how, but his body seemed to remember how to do it. Shikara, that's right, it was holding him to the tree. See, he is a ninja. The boy that spoke had a mop of teal hair that changed to a deeper green as it grew. He must have been the one getting the tongue lashing from the girl. The stranger dropped out of the tree. So who are you guys? The girl, a violet white-haired ninja with silver eyes, spoke first. State your name first, stranger. He shrugged, about to speak when he stopped. Huh? What was his name? Geez, he couldn't remember. In fact, he couldn't remember a thing about himself since he woke up. Come on, think. It's. He rubbed the back of his head, looking comically confused. Single quote. Q, Kyubi. My name is Kyubi, he stated, trying to sound sure of himself. After he said this, the two just stared at him, then doubled over in laughter. Ha ha, oh, that's a good one. The girl was laughing so hard she had her hands across her stomach. Yaga, ha ha ha, you think we're stupid or something? It's the truth, alright. The boy who called himself Kyubi stated. Or at least he hoped it was. Like hell you are. The boy stopped laughing first and shoved a finger in the stranger's face. You mean to tell us you're the Kyubi no Kitsune? Oh, that's rich. At this the other boy's face turned bright red. Okay, so maybe he was a little confused. But now he was curious. The boy looked awful familiar. He got up close to him, shutting his eyes, trying to think. Hey, back off. Do I know you? You're that guy from the dream just now. Dude, I do not swing that way. With that, the green-headed boy stopped speaking and took a closer look at the mud-stained stranger in front of him. Underneath all the dirt. Now wait just a minute. He poked the guy between the eyes. You're the guy who was cramping my style. Yeah, and you're the jerk that threw fruit at my head. The girl was looking between them confusedly now. What are you two talking about? This time her teammate's face broke out into a grin. You know what, I think this guy might actually be telling the truth. What? Last night I Just as he was about to speak, the unexpected happened. The guy who claimed himself to be the Kyuubi felt himself get dizzy. As the tension died down, so did his immediate adrenaline rush, and he began to fall crumpled to the ground in front of the two stranger shinobi. The boy groaned, his eyes flickering open and closed. What happened? He mumbled, feeling something soft underneath him. A bed? So you've decided to join the land of the living, have you, young one? The voice that spoke was old but kind, and he turned his head. An elderly woman sat beside a fire cooking something over an open pot. Where am I? You're in Tsubasa in the care of the Tsukage. Tsubasa? The village hidden in the wings? I'm afraid so, young kid. Huh, what did you call me? The boy sat up, feeling a little light-headed but still wanting answers. You're Kyuubi no Kitsune, are you not? His face reddened at the title. Actually, I don't know who I am. As all young people tend to be. Open your mouth. She came over to his side with a spoon and he obliged. Instantly he regretted it and gagged. Well, you surely are alive now, aren't you? Gah, what is that nasty stuff? He practically jumped, still on the bed, his back to the wall. My laundry water. You crazy old woman. Oba-san. This time it was a familiar girl's voice, and the boy looked up to see the same ninja that had found him before. What had happened? Oh yeah, he'd passed out. I was only teasing. It's a special potion made here in our village. Tell me, don't you feel a bit more strength in your limbs? The old woman asked, going back over to her pot. Come to think of it, yeah, he felt quite a bit stronger now. Still, you could have warned me. He pouted, making the old woman's eyebrow raise, though she didn't say anything. This really was a strange boy, interesting colors too. She hadn't seen gold hair like that since the Yondaime Hokage. Her eyes darkened a bit at this thought and she went back to her pot of healing herbs. After a while of silence, the boy on her bed said, I guess I owe you guys a big thanks. When he looked up again, it was to the girl's face very close to his. I don't know, Hikari, are you sure this guy is really the one from your dream? No doubt about it, I didn't recognize him with all the mud at Fist, but there is no way I could miss that hair. The male ninja said, sitting backwards on a chair across from the others. What's wrong with my hair? The boy on the bed asked, touching his head. Nothing's wrong with it, sheesh, cut the guy a break. The girl hit the other boy up the backside of the head and he grumbled. Hey, there ain't no blondes around here. The boy sitting on the bed still didn't get it and he was staring to get a little annoyed. So who are you people exactly? He felt he had asked for the 100th time. My name is Damanagi Soryu and this is my teammate Nirofumi Hikari. The girl pulled the boy by the ear. Ouch, let me go, sorry. And I am Damanagi Otemo, Tsubasa's wise leader. Oba-san. The boy on the bed couldn't help but laugh a bit at the old woman's antics. She might have been a little bit crazy, she was laughing too. As for you, young man, Hikari here says you claim to be the powerful Kyuubi, the nine-tailed demon fox. Otemo-sama drank a bit of her concoction and sighed. Again the boy felt embarrassment. I told you I don't know who I am. I don't remember anything since his dream with supposedly Hikari in it, and waking a muddy mess on the forest floor. Just a big blank of nothing. How'd you get in my dreams anyway? No offense, but I think I could think up something better. The boy pointed out. Hikari blushed deeply and Soryu laughed out loud. How should I know? You're the one who came stomping into my dreams. The old woman was looking at the boy on the bed closely and he twitched a bit. What? I can sense a powerful chakra from you. Wild and untamable. She turned to Soryu. Bring one of your mirrors. The girl looked confused but nodded her head. A moment later she was back in the room with a large mirror in hand. Put it in front of the boy. Otemo ordered and she did. There was a gasp from the onlookers as the boy saw his reflection. A kitsune with red eyes and 9 tails was looking back at him. He reached for one of his pointed ears but found nothing was there. Hikari whistled. Whoa, he really is a kitsune. The boy's brow wrinkled. What's with this mirror? Soryu's mirrors can show the truth and lies. But I don't look like that. Otemo put a finger to her lip. Not now apparently, but the mirror doesn't lie. There was silence as the boy stared down at his hands. I don't even know what I am. So you have no identity, have you? Otemo put a hand to her chin. Well then, it seems we will need a name for you while you are here. The boy didn't argue. His first thoughts being that he was glad he was welcome in this place. His second, that he wasn't sure he wanted the old woman to name him. Kyuubi no Kitsune. Kyo. She snapped her fingers and pointed at him. That's it, from this day forward you shall be known as the ninja fox, Kyokitsu, of Tsubasa. She was so pleased with herself that she patted the boy on the shoulders. What do you think? Kyo, he spoke the name almost uncertainly. Then looking up in the accepting eyes around him he broke into a grin. The fox ninja Kyo, I like it. Now hold on a moment grandmother, we don't even know where he came from. He's obviously had ninja training with the way he moves and mold chakra. Kitsune or not, he had to get learned from somewhere. Ah yes, the old woman heartily deflated. Do you have a Hite 8 on your person? A Hu-di-wat-si, a forehead protector, Hikari said, touching his own. The mech glinted in the orange glow from the fire. In the center sat a symbol shaped much like a wing that spiraled in the center. Kyo shook his head. I don't remember having anything like that. Then it settled. You must be a wandering nin of some sort. Why else wouldn't you have a village headband? Otemo-sama set a finger to her chin again. The others weren't quick convinced though. Come now you three. Don't look so glum. I'm sure with time Kyo will remember who he is and where he comes from in time. Until then, Lord Tsukiji is happy to have you among his house. Kyo felt a sudden warmth for the old woman. It was strange and his eyes started to burn a bit. Huh Kyo, what's wrong? Soryu asked. She hadn't seen a boy cry since she'd punched Hikari, while they were playing ninja in their academy days. Geez man, get a grip, it was Hikari this time, but his usual pride-filled voice had weakened. Sorry, it's strange. It's as if I thought this was going to be a lot worse. I never imagined anyone would accept me so quickly. Kyo whipped his eyes with an arm and then smiled. I don't know who you are or what Tsubasa is, but I'm really grateful to you all for what you've done for me. The others, still surprised, looked pleased. Although they were extremely cautious, Tsubasa was never a village to turn out those in need. Welcome home, Kyokistu, ninja fox of Tsubasa. It was still late in the night when Otome met with their leader Tsukiji. Her light and jubilant face from earlier was now quite the opposite. Well, he's here, Konoha's Jinjuriku. Very good. Does he remember anything? Tsukiji asked, his tone serious. Not a thing. His ninja skills certainly still seem up to par, according to Hikari and Soryu. And do they suspect anything? She shook her head. I explained the boy must be a wandering nin, had an accident to lose his memories. Good. Tsukiji-sama, speak freely Otome-san, they are still so young. The Tsukiji sighed, a hand to his head. You were much younger in harder times, and so was I. I have faith that this plan will work. Otemo nodded her old head, as you wish, Tsukiji-sama. I'm telling you I saw him leave by himself. Sasuke's voice was cold with surety as he spoke to the Hokage. And there was something wrong with his chakra. Kyuubi's own was laced through it. I'm not saying I don't believe you, Sasuke, and I'm concerned about why he would leave on his own. Not to mention why the watch was asleep. She frowned, gripping a fist. You're sure you didn't see any Akatsuki? None. Tsunade, still sitting at her desk, put her hands to her chin. Alright, Sakura. Yes, milady. Sakura stood to attention. She'd been fidgeting the whole time they had been there. It had been her to find Sasuke lying in the street asleep along with Katetsu, Izumo and any others who should have been on patrol the other night. The Hokage continued. I want both you, Sasuke, Kiba, and Neji to go looking for him. He can't have gotten far. Right, both of the Chunin said and were out of the office a moment later. What do you think this is all about? Shizune said, holding Tonton the Hokage's pet pig in her arms. The pink bundle oinked concernedly. Tsunade bit her lower lip. I don't know. I just hope it has nothing to do with Madara or Akatsuki. Sasuke? Sakura said. They had stopped for the night and were making camp far away from the village. Both Neji and Kiba were still circling the area for any sign of Naruto. At first the Inuzuka had the scent like white on rice, then after a while the trail had gone cold. Yeah? Sasuke answered, staring at the fire he'd just made, deep in thought. You don't think Kyuubi was controlling him, do you? Let's hope not. She nodded her head. Maybe he had some kind of important reason for leaving. Even as she said it, she didn't believe it. There was definitely something wrong here. We'll find him, Sakura. Sasuke didn't look up at her from the fire. I promise. She closed her eyes hardly, then looked back up, a new strength in them. Right, there is no way either of us is going to let that baka just run off on his own. That's the spirit, Shinro. She sat next to him and glanced at his face. It was true, her crush since she was younger had gotten more under control, but she still had strong feeling for him. After Naruto had left with Jiraiya on his 3-year journey all those years ago, she and Sasuke had become a lot closer, although no one could probably tell. The Uchiha had a way of being close while keeping very distant from everyone. Right now she knew he was worried, even if he wouldn't admit it to himself. Finally she leaned her head over onto his shoulder and he flinched. "Sakura," he mumbled annoyed, just be quiet Sasuke-kun." He did, and they both stared up at the waning moon. Neither of them knew it would wax and wane 6 times before they saw their friend again. "What do you think you two are doing?" Yumi-sensei barked as the 2 boys on her team threw the package they were to deliver back and forth between each other. "Ah, come on Yumi-sensei. It's not like it's going to explode." "No, but your heads might if you don't stop playing around." Soryu snapped back at them, grabbing the scroll in her hands and glaring. "Honestly, you two act like a couple of children. All children need a Okawa-san, don't they, Sori-chan?" Kyo teased and she blushed angrily. "Don't call me that, it's bad enough when you use chan, but I'm not your mother." He dodged her punch just as she was about to connect. He'd gotten a lot more agile since he'd come to Tsubasa, thanks to his training with Yumi-sensei and Hikari. Otemo-sama had said it was probably his natural instinct as a kitsune, or at the very least, someone with yokai blood in them. A moment later she didn't have the scroll at all. "You fox," she shouted as Kyo spun it on one finger. To slow Soryu-chan. "Darn you ya, little kitsune gaki." He just grinned at her. They had passed through the small village and were making their way back to the Tsukige's office. The voice rang with seniority as they entered the room. "Team Sorodano." They all stood to attention. If there was one thing they shouldn't do, it was get on the Tsukige's nerves. "The scroll, please." Kyo, who still had it in his hand, set the artifact on the desk table. The man in front of them had graying hair and a few wrinkles, though he still seemed young. He nodded at Kyo and the boy grinned. Yes, the Tsukige really was beginning to get fond of him. He was a bit reckless and extremely hyperactive, but had done a lot for the village so far, including raising New Hope. The Jinjuriku had made himself a good home in Tsubasa. He was getting along with the residents that neither feared him nor though he was evil, unlike the many in Konoha. In fact, those in Tsubasa had always had strong ties to the spirit world, so having someone like Kyo here hardly made them fear in the least. They saw him for what the boy really was, an overactive childish young ninja with a good heart. Some days the cage sat convinced that they had done the boy a favor by erasing his memories. "How did it go?" "We met Jiroko's subordinate Sai at the checkpoint. It's all set up. The Chunin exams will be held in Konohagakure in little under a week." Yumi told him. "Excellent." The Tsukige looked over at Kyo, who was shifting from foot to foot erratically. "What is it, Kyokitsu? I was just wondering what exactly the mission for entering the Chunin exams are. I mean, Hikari and Soryu are already considered Chunin level, and I'm not sure you guys are going through all this trouble for me." He grinned with a hand behind his head. The Tsukige chuckled a bit. "No Kyo, I'm sorry, but you becoming a Chunin isn't our highest goal in Konoha." He then looked serious. "We are going to infiltrate Konoha for a special S-rank mission. The retrieval of a very precious artifact that belongs to Tsubasagakure." "A precious artifact?" "The 3 of you will be backing up Yumi in the case that anything goes wrong." "And that would be?" The Tsukige sighed. "That is top secret as of now. Trust me, the 3 of you will know if you are needed." "Ah, come on, don't we even get a hint?" Hikari whined. He was 14, the youngest ninja of the group, and seemed to always emphasize it with his immature behavior. "No." Soryu elbowed Hikari in the gut irritably and he grunted. She wasn't much older than him, though with her beauty she could probably pass for 20. The boy was rubbing his stomach sorely when the Tsukige spoke again. "Your team is leaving tomorrow, Yumi. I suggest the 4 of you get some sleep before you leave." "Great. Let me guess, we're getting up at the crack of dawn." "Precisely, Hikari." There was a groan from both of the boys and Soryu grabbed them each by the ear. "Let's go, you two, we'll need supplies before we leave." There were cries of, "Ouch, ouch, ouch," as she dragged them out of the room after her. "Yumi." "Yes, Oto-sama. I'm relying on you. This mission counts on your success." "I know. I will do my best." She looked serious. "What of Kyo?" Both Hikari and Soryu have become very attached to him. Even some of the villager like him. Still, he is from Konoha and in these unfortunate circumstances a tool. "I understand, father. You have become quite close to him as well, Yumi. I can see it in your eyes. You've been taking care of the boy for the past 6 months now." Yes, Lady Otome and I have been making sure he says comfortable here. That is not what I mean, Yumi. I like the boy too, but remember he is still a tool for Jiroko's use and can be used at any time. Yumi cursed the name of the one who was their only chance of getting the village's treasure back. I never thought Tsubasa would have to stoop this low. Drastic times call for drastic measures. You are prepared for this, and we will succeed so long as we play our cards right. All of these secrets, not even Jiroko's subordinates are aware of what we plan to do. Or the bigger outcome if he uses his real threat. Tsukiji bowed his head. Let's hope it will never come to that. Alright, Kyo-kun? Yumi asked as the boy pushed around his dinner. When he didn't look up, she tried again. Kyo-kun? Oh yeah, everything's fine. He said, sitting straight in his chair. You love ramen, Kyo, you not eating it is like saying I don't need air to breathe. So tell me what's wrong? It's this Konoha place, Yumi. He only used this name when they were back home. She wouldn't let him when they were on missions or training, but at home she would let it slide. In fact, if she were truthful with herself, she would have thought it was endearing. What about it? She asked, standing and taking her bowl to the sink, rinsing it. She looked like she didn't care, but really she was ready for any indication he was regaining the memories of his old home. It's just, I'm afraid. Afraid of what? She asked, now looking back at him in concern. Gah, I don't know. Something about that place, it makes me feel weird. I don't like it. He shook his head. Well, don't, you're the most unpredictable ninja I've ever met, Kyo. No one could guess what you're capable of, especially after what I've taught you. He looked up and grinned at her. I didn't even know some of the stuff I could do. By the way, the Tsukiji wanted you to do something about that hair of yours, not to mention your face. What's wrong with my face? He cried indigently. Geez, you and Hikari cut me some slack, I can't help the color of my hair. It's not that, stop whining. Yumi ordered, rolling her eyes. It's just that you don't look anything like a ninja from Tsubasa at all. You're too pale and no one here has blonde hair like you. So it will draw attention. At least change it to something different. And your face markings are going to have to be hidden too. Kyo huffed and finally she had him by the back of the shirt, pulling him from his chair. Come on, you big baby, we'll take care of it now. What, Yumi? No, stop. The next morning Hikari and Soryu were waiting impatiently outside of Tsubasagakure for both their sensei and Kyokitsu. They were almost half-hour late when the two heard some voices in the distance. I told you stop fiddling with them, Yumi. Don't call me that, Kyo, I'm your sensei now, hold still, it's a bit crooked there. Turning the corner and coming into sight, the other two gaped at their sensei and friend. What the hell did you do to him, Yumi-sensei? Hikari was the first to speak. Shut up. Both of them shouted at once. I look ridiculous? Kyo grumbled, touching a piece of his hair. Along with the new color, Otemo-sama had put one of her concoctions in his hair to make it stay down, and he hated it. The bandages that covered both sides of his cheeks made him feel ridiculed. Well, it certainly is a new look. Soryu waved an awkward hand. You might even be able to pass as my brother. That's the idea, Yumi said, hands on her hips. What? You heard me. Now let's go. The sensei ordered, and they began the long run down the path to Konoha, the village hidden in the leaves. I need to see your identification, Katetsu said to the four unknown nin. Both he and Izumo were a bit shocked to see Tsubasa shinobi participating in the Chunin exams this year. It had been over 18 years since any of their ninja had shown up in Konoha. 3 of them were extremely attractive with their dark skin and light hair, while the third had a much more pale complexion. Or at least next to the others he did. His white hair seemed forcibly tamed as it poked out in some places. Yumi Sorodano, Hikari Nirofumi, Soryu Damanagi and Kyokitsu Damanagi. Katetsu said out loud, you two are siblings? I'm his older sister, the girl said, although she didn't seem pleased with this. The fair-skinned boy had a goofy look on his face. He definitely stuck out between the group with his bandaged face and bright orange jacket. He almost reminded Izumo of. Kyo was thinking back to their conversation from earlier. No way, sensei. Oh yes, way, you're going to pose as Kyo-kun's older sister. What? Both yelled at her together. Yumi just barked back. Kyo, nobody knows how old you are, and with that baby face of yours it's the most logical decision. But I know I'm older than her. When a vein began to throb in Yumi's head, they had stopped arguing. Ah, don't look so disappointed, Ni-chan. Kyo put his arm around her. Her shoulder tensed and her lip twitched. Kyo, Kitsu, you have approximately 3 seconds to take your arm off me. The boy didn't wait and he sweat dropped with his hands in front of him. Sheesh, take a joke, Sori-chan. I'm gonna kill you. Finally, it's not me being the target. Hikari said, smugly punching Kyo in the back of the shoulder. Oh yeah, not for long. Kyo had him held down, ruffling the greenhead's hair with his fist. Ga, cut that out. Will you two please stop? It was Yumi-sensei who spoke now, and when she did it was with a dark malice that sent all 3 of her students into meek obedience. Yes, sensei. Katetsu handed the papers back to Yumi with his own sweat drop. Welcome to Konoha. The woman nodded and they entered the city. Sugoi. Soryu said as the gate closed behind them. Kyo gave a long whistle while Hikari just gaped. This place is huge. I've never seen a city this big. Kyo said in awe, making Yumi give a relieved sigh. Good, his memories are still firmly locked. Come on, let's take a look around. Hikari said excitedly, grabbing Soryu's hand. For once she didn't argue. What a minute, you 3, we still need to find an inn. Ah, come on, sensei. The only way she could keep a dignified face was by turning her head away, eyes closed. Her students all had that childlike wonder in their eyes. Girl, alright, you win, but I want to see all of your butts at the inn before it's late. You're going to need your rest for the exams tomorrow. Aye aye, Captain. Kyo saluted her and the 3 were gone in a ninja blur. She shook her head, her lip twitching upward into a melancholy smile. Better enjoy it while it lasts. The 3 Tsubasa hit all the stores they could in the limited time they had. To the 3 of them, Konoha was amazing. Tsubasagakure wasn't even half the size of this place. Toward the end of the day, they were laughing and walking while eating some dango. This place is awesome, I can't believe I was worried about coming here. Kyokitsu said, taking a bite from his dinner. What, you were worried? Hikari rolled his eyes. The great ninja fox of Tsubasa? Ha ha ha, very funny. Kyo pronounced each ha individually while folding his arms in a pout. You never know, maybe I was really a mercenary nin before you met me, and am wanted by Konoha's Anbu. As he said this, he still had his eyes shut and of course ran into something. To be more precise, someone. Ouch, he groaned from the ground as papers went flying around them. The young man he had run into looked just as surprised. He'd been turning the corner with a stack of documents too tall to see over. You alright, Iruka-sensei? Said another individual Kyo didn't recognize. He was a brown-haired boy with a high ponytail and bored eyes, though now they were looking down in concern. He helped the man on the ground to his feet. Yeah, I'm fine. Gee, think I'm fine too. Kyo grumbled from the ground when a hand was extended to him. Sorry about that, Iruka said, the boy taking his hand and staring at him. After standing there for an uncomfortably long moment, they both pulled away simultaneously. Yeah, no problem, the boy said, his blue eyes looking confused. Oh crap, let me help you with that. He rubbed the back of his head and bent down to pick up the papers with the academy teacher. Iruka thanked him and Shikamaru spoke. You guys are Tsubasa shinobi? It wasn't really a question and the Nara's eyes were studying them, even with their facade of boredom. How'd you tell? Kyo pointed at his headband and Hikari laughed. Soryu just looked coldly at the calculating boy. Do you have a problem with that? Shikamaru shrugged. Kyo looked at her in confusion. Why was she acting so cool to these strangers? So what do you think of Konoha? Shikamaru asked Kyo, his attention now all on him. Kyo didn't really notice and said, it's amazing, I never knew a village could be so huge. The Konoha boy was looking hardly at him, brow furrowed. He was about to ask what it was the leaf shinobi was staring at, when Soryu spoke up. Kyokitsu Hikari-kun, we need to meet sensei at the inn, it's getting late. Oh yeah. The boy nodded and turned to leave with his friends. Sorry about running into you, Amino Iruka. Iruka sei-san. Kyo waved and wondered why his tongue just about slipped and said sensei. Maybe it was because the other guy had called him that, and what was Sori-chan so mad about right now? It was only until they had found the inn they were staying at that she had gone back to her usual, Hikari torturing self. The 3 of you are late, Yumi said crossly as they entered the room. We got a little sidetracked. Kyo said, waving an impassive hand. Yeah, because Kyo tripped over his own feet. I ran into him. Who did you run into, Kyo-kun? Yumi asked, fishing a room key out of her pocket. Oh, just some teacher who works at the ninja academy. He shrugged. She sighed, try to keep your balance tomorrow, alright? The last thing we need is you guys botching the exams. Yeah, Kyo took the key and motioned to Hikari. Come on, winged Gaki of Tsubasa. Hikari tried to snatch the silver key from him, but Kyo kept it just out of reach. As they headed to the upper level of the inn to their room, Hikari wondered how Kyo had known the guy was a teacher at the academy. Did you just see that? Iruka said as soon as the three individuals left them. You noticed it, huh? The young teacher had a hand to his chin and shook his head. It can't be. But that look and voice, just the entire character. I think we need to speak to the Hokage. The next day, this was impossible. How the heck is anyone supposed to know the answers to these questions? Kyo racked his brain. It was the final 5 minutes of the exam and he couldn't put a single answer down. He gritted his teeth. Even with his amnesia, there was no way he would have known any of this beforehand. Yumi-sensei was worried about him tripping over his own feet, and the first part of these tests had nothing to do with fighting. He laid his head down on the table. What do I do now? Is there a problem? Ibiki didn't even have to leer over the boy to make him sit up straight. No, everything's fine. He stared at his paper again, chewing on his pencil, then pulled his head protector off. Hopefully she would notice. It figures. Soryu thought as Kyo gave her the signal. Neither boy had been able to answer any of the questions. She was the only one who had found a disguised Chunin and could extract his answers. In the end, she had to help them both. Shutting her eyes, she performed her jutsu. Suddenly the answers were appearing on the metal sheen of Kyo's headband. He sighed in relief. Thank God. He began to scribble away at the paper, working double time to finish, not understanding half of what he was putting down. Finally he whipped his brow again and put the Hite-8 back on. The buzzer for time's up just went off. It was time for the 10th question. Alright, before I announce the final question you have a choice. Ibiki had his arms folded. To leave the exams now. There were shouts of, what? And, is he kidding? Or you can answer the last question. Anyone who answers wrong will be disqualified and prohibited from ever taking these exams again. Now there was a real ruckus between the shinobi, and one girl stood up banging the table. But that's not fair. Ibiki's eyes narrowed. Life not far, someone else is always making the rules for you. Today it's mine. Get used to it. There was a long silence, as if everyone was holding his or her breath. So what? Ibiki looked up at the kid who'd spoken. It was none other than the grandson of the third Hokage. Konohamaru had his fist held high. So what if I'm called a genin for the rest of your life? It's not about the title, it's about your skill. His words seemed to give strength to the room, and Ibiki raised his eyebrow. He'd seen this attitude before. The kid is right, another boy said, and Ibiki turned to look at him. It was the one who hadn't started his exam until the last second. His head was bent and messy white hair hung in his eyes. He then looked up, a grin on his face. A title doesn't mean anything on the battlefield. If anyone else here truly wants to rank as a Chunin, then I think the answer is obvious. We might actually have some good candidates this year. The older ninja thought, but kept his pleasure to himself. So long as they can back up their mouths with their brains and body. Alright then, those who choose to continue on feel free to stay and wait for the 10th question. What kind of exam is that? Hikari complained as they left the first building. Threatening never to make Chunin if you stay and get it wrong. Then choosing to stay was the correct choice? I mean, it's totally twisted. Soryu was shaking her head at him, but Kyo was deep in thought. What's up with you? She asked him. Nothing, just having a serious case of deja vu. He rubbed his head as if he had a headache. She shrugged a shoulder, not bothering to pursue the matter. Yumi, who had just joined her team, was frowning. This might be a problem. Tsunade looked seriously back and forth between the two Junin in the room with her. Are you absolutely certain of this? She asked. Shikamaru was the first to answer. There's no doubt. If I hadn't talked to him, I might not have guessed. Even with the hair change and covering his markings, I'm positive he was Naruto. You don't think he's turned his back on the village? Shizune said, shocked. No, not a chance. That was nothing like Naruto. There's something wrong with him. He didn't even remember my name, Lady Hokage. Iruka's face had fallen. Naruto was like his younger brother, he'd been with him since his academy days. After becoming a genin, the two of them had formed a close-knit bond. It must have something to do with that night. Tsunade said seriously. They all knew from Sasuke the story of Naruto leaving in the middle of the night 6 months ago, only to never return. This is strange. I want top priority given to this. Shizune, post Anbu to watch that group of Tsubasa shinobi at all times. The dark-robed woman nodded her head and left the room. Shikamaru informed Sakura and Sasuke of what you found out. If by chance this really is Naruto, one of them will be able to tell. She then turned to Iruka, who was still in a bit of a daze. As for you Iruka, Konohamaru and his team will be beginning the second exam. You should be ready to go in the meantime. Yes, Lady Tsunade. They both departed. Tsunade stood and looked out over the village she'd pledged her life to protect, along with every person in it. If that boy is Naruto, then I have no doubt that these winged ninja are behind his disappearance and behavior. If that's the case, we can only hope the damage done isn't too great to reverse. You know, this was just a little too easy. Kyo said, bouncing the heaven scroll up and down in his hand, while Hikari held the earth in his own. Speak for yourself, oh great Kyuubi. I swear you little. Kyo was about to put Hikari in a headlock when Anther Ninja called out to them. They readied themselves for attack. Hey you there. The man was from Suna and he appeared to be alone. He had his hands in the air to show he meant no threat. Yeah, because this is just a tea party shinobi get together and chat at. Kyo thought, still holding out his kunai. What do you want? I got separated from my team and I'm completely lost. I was wondering if I could travel with you guys. Oh sure, and what about the heaven and earth scrolls? Your teammates got those too? He looked a bit uneasy at the question. I've no idea, but the thing is I don't want to die so. Kyo hesitated and put his kunai away. What are you doing? Was Hikari's first response. He's injured. Kyo pointed out the blood on the mont's arm. Hikari hesitated. I'm sorry to be a burden. The Suna nin said, holding his aching wound. I've lost a lot of blood. Kyo was the first to put his arm around the man and then by instinct he grappled him backward. What are you doing? You know it's just not nice to send a substitution out on a shinobi's job. Release. The genjutsu was broken and so was the appearance of the puppet before him. It wasn't a highly well-crafted one, and it didn't have to be. Paper bomb huh? Guess the joke's on you. Kyo pulled a small mirror from his pocket and immediately made sure it had contact with the puppet. A moment later there was the sound of an explosion in the trees. The three Suna shinobi had no idea what had hit them when suddenly their explosion puppet was right next to them. The last thing they saw was the glint of a mirror and the flash of light violet hair. Well, that was fun. Soryu dusted herself off. You know, if you just touched it with your headband I could get there all right. She pointed out to Kyo and he shrugged. Look, there is no way, puppet or not, that I'm getting that close to somebody. You didn't seem to have a problem with it, on that mission when we were watching that rich guy's curvy daughter. Kyo's face turned from pink to red in less than a second. That's not true. He blushed deeply and began to stomp away. I'm going to fight something. He sounded like a child trying to get back at someone. Hikari grinned from ear to ear and Soryu just shook her head. Let's just get to the checkpoint without dying. Is this really all that's left? The Hokage asked Anko, who was just as surprised as she was. It seems that it's thanks to the Tsubasa ninja. I've never seen so many candidates wiped out, not to mention the creatures some say they killed. Tsunade nodded her head as she looked over the four remaining teams. Those who hadn't taken on the Tsubasa nin were just as shaken up from the forest, and some could barely stand. She glanced moment at her predecessor's grandson. His team was dirty and bruised, but they each still seemed proud in their own right. She had seen that look before so many times, and as she glanced to her right she could see it again. The boy that both Shikamaru and Iruka had claimed to be Naruto had a foxy grin on his face. He's obviously higher than Chunin level, Tsunade thought, which would be no surprise if it was the boy who was always calling her Ba-san. After studying with Jiraiya and then achieving the highest level of sage mood, he was a shoe-in for Junin. The only thing hindering the process was those uptight old fools on the council. She'd snorted in disgust at the time. It had been hard enough promoting the boy to Chunin. She felt wariness in her heart as she thought of her old friend and teammate. It had been little over a year since pain had killed him. Half of the reason Konoha was even in shape for the Chunin exams was thanks to his apprentice Naruto. She sighed and then dismissed everyone. Good job, you're all still alive. Keep up the fantastic work. And with that she was gone, leaving the other ninja presiding over the exams a bit duped. Tsunade never had liked the standard responsibilities of being Hokage. Paperwork, presiding over meetings. She could almost sound like Shikamaru and call it troublesome, but that would be too nice. Well, that was interesting, Soryu said as Kyo stuck his lip out, squinting his eyes. The boy always did this when he was confused, annoyed, or both. So what are we supposed to do now? She didn't even tell us what the next test was. The next exam is a fight to pick through the stragglers. But there's so few candidates left. Soryu said, glancing at the other teams. There was a group from Konoha that comprised of extremely young-looking genin, who looked younger than Hikari. The other two, a team from Kirigakure and Kumogakure, they themselves looked beaten down as it was. Still, there were those in every team with a powerful will in their eyes. The refusal to be defeated. Kyo watched the team of Konoha ninja as they spoke with their Chunin leader. That shrimp in the middle, the guy with the dark glasses, was scolding. Suddenly Kyo's head erupted in pain and he was on the ground on his knees. You think the path to Hokage is going to be easy? Like someone is just going to hand it to you? Everyone call me honorable grandson, no one ever uses my real name. Do you really think he's cooler than me? Yeah, Sasuke was way cooler. What's your problem, Dobi? You're not afraid, are you, scaredy cat? Naruto, you're one of the ones I want to fight the most. What the hell were all these images and voices? He was fighting with someone, a boy about 12 years old. They were on the water between a great waterfall. Sasuke, I won't let Orochimaru take you. I'm taking you back to the village even if I have to break every bone in your body. Go ahead, you couldn't even scratch my forehead protector. Sasuke? Neither Soryu nor Hikari recognized the name that Kyo mumbled as he withered on the ground. When they had rolled him onto his back, he looked up sightlessly, and both ninja gave each other uncertain glances. Whose name is that? Kyo looked like he had seen a ghost. What the hell, Kyo? Hikari was shaking him a bit, trying to snap him out of it. Kyo-kun, what's wrong? This time it was Yumi who came on the scene. She bent next to the boy who was looking up at her in a daze. Huh, what happened? The boy finally shook his head, sitting up. You tell us what was with the seizure? Soryu said worriedly. Kyo's face was still white as a sheet and he was sweating. Yumi was trying to take a closer look at him, but he fidgeted away. I'm fine, Yumi, nay, just a little headache. She obviously didn't believe the younger boy's excuse at why he just landed passed out on the ground. He wasn't thinking straight either if he was calming her, nay, in public. Kyo? She grabbed his chin, seriously looking into his eyes, and understood immediately. He was remembering. This is not good. I told you, Yumi, nay, sensei, I'm fine. Just got a little carried away with the jutsus, that's all. The boy tried to laugh it off, but his voice was shaky as he pulled her hands away. Finally, she decided to let it go and helped him to his feet. Looks like you took out more than half the teams. It's going to be a short preliminary. She cocked her head. Yeah, well, Kyo, rightening himself, had his hand behind his head and was blushing a bit. I might have gotten a little carried away. Yeah, you did, but you still owe the bill for dinner. You two were making bets? Soryu said indignantly. Hearing this, Yumi grabbed hold of Hikari's ear and pulled. Did the both of you decided to let Kyo face the enemy on his own? You're a team, what's wrong with you, Baka? To finish, she slapped him upside the back of the head. Not a light thing from the daughter of Tsubasagakure's Tsukage. Ow, why don't you pick on Soryu? He just missed another love tap between the eyes when Kyo bent toward him. Just keep your mouth shut and she might let you live. Excuse me? Someone interrupted the group and they all simultaneously looked up. A pretty girl with cherry blossom colored hair cocked her head. She was staring at Kyo and he was doing the same to her. Finally, when Hikari couldn't take it anymore, he put his friend in a headlock mockingly. Checking out the Konoha Kunoichi already? Shut up. Kyo swatted at him, but it was hardly anything lethal. This boy's obviously close to his teammates. Sakura thought, could Shikamaru have been wrong? But then even Katetsu and Izumo had mentioned something about him to the Hokage when she was in her office. She shook her head, then got back to the business of why she was there, plus a bit of detective work of her own. Still, she was sure she just heard him say, Sasuke. Shaking her head, she spoke again. There will be a short break between now and the next exam. Since so many of the teams were disqualified, we need to rearrange the fighting matches. Feel free to follow one of our ninja back into the village. I thought the fights were randomly picked. Soryu said, we have an odd number of candidates this year. Some may have to fight Chunin from the village. Seriously? Kyo looked up. He had forced himself to stop staring at the girl and his face broke out into a grin. Alright, beating a Chunin would be way more of a challenge than some of these guys. I'm ready to wipe the floor with him. He punched his open palm, all fatigued gone. The glint in his eye was familiar, and that voice. Hey guys, I heard there's this great ramen stand around here. Ramen again, Q-kun. You're paying Kitsune. Shut up, Hikari. A moment later the group was gone, heading in their own direction for the short period of break. Sakura just stood there dumbfounded. That really was. Sasuke stood in the shadows just above. That character and swagger. There was no doubt they were similar to Naruto's. Still, there was something different as well. Well, the idiot acted like enough of a doby. He shut his eyes. No, he would wait. All he had to do was see the young man fight, then he would have all the answer he needed. A memory from a long time ago came up in his mind. A true shinobi can read his opponent's mind with his fist. That's what we have Sasuke. That had been what? 5 years ago? It was still fresh in his mind like yesterday. Ever since that day he was drugged back to Konohagakure, he looked at the incident with a shade of hatred. Not because Naruto had beaten him, but that he had allowed himself to be manipulated so much by Orochimaru and his followers. It was true his revenge still burned strong for Itachi, but he was going to carve his own path to power. That was something a very important friend had taught him. Of course he wouldn't admit it. There was no way in the world he was ever going to tell that Yusura Tonkatsu anything even if he was here. He shouldn't even have to. Our fists do the talking. Kyo was slurping up his third bowl of ramen when a group of young genin came on the scene. He recognized them as one of the few last in the running for the Chunin exam. Heiji-san. One with a long red scarf said loudly, taking a seat to his left. Naru Konohamaru, aren't you supposed to be at the Chunin exams? They're taking a short break to set up the next fight. Someone said some guy from Tsubasa really beat the tar out of the other teams. We didn't meet him though, or any of the Tsubasa nin for that matter. Moegi said a bit timidly, glancing nervously to her left. We did see them at the checkpoint. Thought it was hard enough getting that earth scroll. Udon sniffled a bit. The kid just couldn't seem to keep off a cold, allergy, whatever it was. That doesn't mean anything. I'm still gonna kick that guy's butt and become a Chunin. He before even Naruto Nissan ever did too. His face split, then fell again. But before he could think about his missing older brother he heard a slapping sound. Kyo had hit the palms of his hands on his knees and stood to confront the little Konoha ninja. Well, I'd like to see that. What are you, about 4 feet 9 inches? He asked, planting an elbow on the kid's head. Hey, who do you think? I happen to be the ninja from Tsubasa who took out almost half the entries in the exam. There was a smile on his face. And you are? Konohamaru looked up at him with an angry stare and put his hands together to gather chakra. Kyo wasn't ready for what happened next when the boy said, Oiroke no jutsu. And a cute girl with long brown hair was underneath his arm, completely naked. He fell backward with a shout and the henge broke. My name's Sarutobi Konohamaru and I'm going to be the 7th Hokage someday. His brash tone was slightly arrogant, but he still sounded like such a kid. To everyone's surprise, it was Kyo who was laughing, brushing himself off from the ground. He liked this kid. He had a fire in him that Kyo could relate to, though he wasn't sure why. A will of fire. So you're going to be the 7th Hokage, huh? You know it's recommended when becoming a leader to a village that you know how to count. Kyo chuckled again. His team was starting to wonder why he was so friendly with this unknown shinobi, albeit a little one. But then, being friendly seemed to be in Kyo's nature since they'd first met him. What do you mean? Isn't it the 5th Hokage who's reigning over Konoha now, or did we suddenly disqualify 7 from the number system? The boy's face heated up and he balled his fist. That place is for Naruto Nichin. Naruto, there was that name again. It had been in that weird flashback of a memory too, by that kid with the funny black hair. Geez, his head was hurting again. He tried not to think about it too much. Who's Naruto? Uzumaki Naruto is a hero in the eyes of Konohamaru here. The man serving the ramen said from over the counter. Learned that trick from him too. His sweat dropped a bit, referring to the Oiroki no Jutsu. Kyo laughed again. Well, I wish I could meet him. Hey, is he going to be participating in the exams? He heard the boy say that this Naruto had already passed the Chunin exams before. But since there were so few people to go up against, maybe he would be set out to fight in the next round. Just then the boy's face completely fell, and it was one of his friends who answered. No, Naruto-kun has been missing from the village for about 6 months now. It was the girl, and she fiddled with her hands as she said this. Huh, well, sometimes missions last a long time, Kyo said with a shrug, but Konohamaru sprang in. No, Naruto ni isn't gone on a mission. He left the village on his own and nobody knows why. Kyo looked at him confusedly. He made himself a missing nin? Nobody knows. Udon piped, adjusting his glasses. He just vanished without telling anyone. Konohamaru said, and he looked very much like the child he was as he stared at his feet. Suddenly there was a weight on his head, placed there by a hand. He looked up to see the bright blue eyes of Kyokitsu looking down at him. Don't give up. If your friend is half as great as you say, he's going to come back eventually. And even if he doesn't, you can bring him back. He ruffled Konohamaru's hair one last time and straightened. Gaki. Hey, don't call me that. Suddenly there was a voice over some unknown speakers surrounding the city. Would those participating in the Chunin exams please gather to the main arena? I repeat, would the. With that, the party of Tsubasa shinobi were leaving. Kyo was waving a hand at the three smaller genin, his back turned as he walked away. See ya, Gaki. Don't give up. Those were words that kept Konohamaru going every day. It was a part of his ninja way. Something that was helped created by Naruto ni. Somehow, with a positive reaction from this stranger, he felt a new strength. In fact, the guy kind of reminded him of Ni-san. Suddenly his fists were shaking at his sides. What's wrong, Konohamaru? Moegi asked, a bit worried. She'd been the first to notice the Tsubasa nin when they had entered Ichiraku's, and had been the most wary when Konohamaru was boasting his opinions of strength. Now she was the first to notice something off miss with her friend. He's strong, was the serious answer she got, and then Konohamaru looked up at both his teammates, a grin cracking his face. I can't wait to fight him. Kyo didn't know why he'd been so nice to the genin he just had. But his team wasn't about to let him off the hook so easily. They're an enemies of Tsubasa, Kyo, you shouldn't get too friendly. He shrugged Yumi's comment off, patting her shoulder. Ah, come on, they're just kids, and well, it's not the same. Kyo, he jumped at the sudden sharpness used on his name and looked over at Soryu. She had an angry look on her face. These people are responsible for what happened all those years ago, and you would just forget. Kyo had never seen Soryu close to tears before. Most of the time she was too busy being hard on Hikari. This time was different though, and Kyo didn't quite understand why. What? Yumi-sensei was the first to pull him aside. You two go to the arena. We'll catch up to you soon, she said, but go, she ordered, and any order from the daughter of the 5th Tsukage was not going to be unheeded. They nodded and were gone in a blur. Kyo-kun, let me tell you something. She patted a seat next to her on a bench and he sat down. Back when the Yondaime was still ruling Konoha, he did something very horrible to the people of Tsubasagakure. Huh? Kyo knew that Konoha had wronged Tsubasa, but he had never learned the real tale. No one in the village liked to speak about it, and whenever he brought it up it was met with sad faces. Yondaime came with his summoning toad Gamabunta. They destroyed the first half of the village and stole a very precious artifact, killing a lot of innocent people in the incident. What? I never told you because, well, your past isn't a painful one, and I didn't want to trouble you with mine. I have no past, only a future, Yumi Ni-chan. He gripped her hand in his and realized that his sensei was crying. Yumi-ne, what's wrong? I lost my mother in that attack. She took the Yondaime head on to protect the village treasure. The mythical flute of lotus. I found her murdered body when I was just a genin. This struck Kyo harder than any other news he had heard, and suddenly his gut wrenched. God, Yumi, I'm so sorry. He held her close to him like a big brother or father would, even though he was far too young to be either of those things. Suddenly, with a new force, he looked down at her stained streak face and kissed her forehead. I swear, Yumi, you'll never go through that pain again as long as I live. I promise that till the day I die, even after. She gripped his hands tight and nodded. This boy, there was something about him that could lift the heart of any he touched, and she knew it was his gift. Thank you, Kyo. The arena was set and the games were ready to commence. Since there were so few competitors, it was proposed that the third round be skipped to head right into the final. And so Kyo and his team waited in the wings for their fights. The battles were impressive so far. Soryu had already won hers, and with a squeeze on the shoulder from Kyo and the look in his eyes, she knew he understood her. Who could say how many people Soryu had lost in the past, but there would be no more. He would make sure of that. Next, Hikari Nirofumi of Tsubasa Gakure. The announcer's voice boomed and Hikari could hardly contain his excitement. Hell yeah! He punched the air, catching Kyo's own fist. Get out there and kick some ass. It was the most violent thing Kyo had said all day and Hikari loved it. You got it. He landed on the ground below gracefully and stood to face his opponent. Kyo blinked. No way. Seconded competitor Moegi Kusanade of Konoha. Standing across from him was that little girl with the ridiculously high pigtails. One of Konomaru's team. She didn't look like much against Hikari, and part of him really hoped he wouldn't mess her up too badly. Don't look so put off, Kyo. She got through the first 2 levels, so she's no pushover. Surprisingly, it was Soryu who mentioned this. Kyo nodded but just watched the fight commence. Alright, here I go, Sora Tsubasa no Jitsu. What the that idiot? This time no one bothered getting surprised at the sudden shout from Yumi-sensei. In fact, everyone was shell-shocked because perching from the boy's back through the burning light there were 2 giant blue wings. He's already pulling out that technique? That baka. But it was too late and this fight was going to come to a close real soon. Even with the young Kunoichi's tenacity, she was no match against the sharper than kunai feathers Hikari was aiming at her. Something's not right about this fight, Yumi said darkly, and Kyo nodded. Slowly but surely Hikari was acting more like an animal than a ninja. In this state he could just about kill the girl. Damn it. Kyo couldn't sit any longer and he was down on the playing field when suddenly the little female ninja gave a sharp jab to Hikari's stomach, sending him backward. A chakra-controlled kick? It didn't matter, there was bloodlust in Hikari's eyes and he was ready for the kill. Hikari! Kyo shouted, jumping Black Ops as they tried to stop him from entering the fight. Stop! He ordered as the heated acid green eyes of his teammate, his friend, glared at him. He was going to lunge. Kyo grabbed a kunai and threw, only grazing on of the boy's fatal wings. He looked livid. How dare you? Was written all over his face. Yeah, now just get away from the girl. Then just as suddenly he snapped out of it and his eyes were back in focus. Kyo? Yeah? I'm gonna kill you for that. I thought you might say that. Then suddenly the boy went limp, and Kyo was only there just in time to catch him. Geez Hikari, what were you thinking? But the boy was already asleep in Kyo's arms. Awkwardly he turned around to see the crowd of eyes staring at them. The announcer's voice broke the tension. The winner is Moegi Kusanade of Konoha. What on earth is that? Tsunade said from her seat above the arena. That boy, that chakra, it wasn't human. She would have stopped the fight herself if it wasn't for the youth that dropped onto the field to intervene. Naruto? She couldn't hear what he was saying to his friend, but a moment later the winged Tsubasa nin was crippled in his arms. Sasuke, who was in the crowd below, activated his Sharingan. That kid, he's A. And the winner is Moegi Kusanade of Konoha. The next match will be between Damanagi Kyokitsu, Ninja Fox, of Tsubasagakure, and Sarutobi Konohamaru of Konohagakure. Kyo looked up at the sound of his voice, and only had a moment to hand Hikari of to Soryu. Yumi-sensei was nowhere in sight. Baka, Soryu said as she took the boy, but there was a note of worry in her voice. What had possessed Hikari to start his battle like that? She knew he was hot-blooded, but even he knew to bide his time and examine an enemy before such an attack. Sori-chan, I don't know what's going on, but I'm worried. Keep a close eye on Hikari, Kyo said before leaving them and appearing on the field again. His opponent's eyes were shining. Yo, Gaki. He waved a hand with his own smirk. Don't think that trick from earlier is going to work twice. Oh, don't worry. I've got bigger options for here than a little ninjutsu. Konohamaru answered, pulling shuriken from his belt's pouch. Begin. Kyokitsu gave a foxy grin and in a moment he was behind the boy. Those little throwing stars aren't going to help you here, he said, landing a punch just at the nape of the boy's neck. It was then that the clone dissipated in a puff of smoke. You were saying? Konohamaru could be heard from above as he threw his shuriken. Kyo dodged and had to bend backward into a flip, just to get out of the way of the kid's kicks. Your mind, another clone? Kyo thought as a second boy grabbed him from behind. Solid too. Who had taught the kid such an advanced technique? Alright, I'll admit it, you're good. Kyo grunted under the boy's chakra-controlled grip. But I'm better. He himself vanished for a substitution. Konohamaru looked confused and so did his 2 clones as one held the other back. Gah! He turned around to see Kyokitsu grinning. Come on kid, I thought you wanted to be Hokage. Konohamaru gritted his teeth that had done it. You want a real jutsu, I'll give you one. The clones behind him began to focus chakra into both his palms. Kyo looked in wonder as the boy held the blue energy swirling in his hand. Rasengan? Huh? The thought put him off guard, and it was all the chance that the genin needed. His clones were the fist to close in on him, and they had him pinned by the arms. Konoha Wind Strike Double Rasengan. Konohamaru cried, and the force that hit Kyo in both the gut and the chest was phenomenal. From above, the crowd saw the Tsubasa shinobi's body fly backward, crumbling a wall in his wake. Naruto. Sakura cried from her post next to the Hokage. She had to see if he was alright, but Tsunade stopped her. What? We can't afford to draw attention to this. If these Tsubasa nin are the ones behind Naruto's disappearance, then they are most definitely hiding something. For now we let them think they have the upper hand. Sakura didn't know what to do. This wasn't just some unknown Tsubasa shinobi, this was Naruto. She was sure of it, and she couldn't watch as the smoke from the rubble was clearing, and the first thing everyone saw was the shadow of someone standing back up. Kyo-kun. Soryu breathed. His jacket ripped. Both his chest and stomach were smoking and bleeding where the two Rasengan had connected. He looked up at the boy, and this time there was a whole new seriousness on the air. Just as immediately though, the wounds began to heal. His stare penetrated into Konohamaru, and the young nin forced himself to stand his ground. That was an impressive attack. If you can dish that out, then you can definitely take this. Kyo swiped some blood from his stomach and preformed a series of hand signs. Slamming his hand to the earth, he shouted, summoning Jitsu Three-Tailed Kitsune. Three-tailed what? Tsunade stood, gripping the banister in front of her, making the metal bend. In another jet of smoke, the boy was standing on the back of a giant red fox. Sure enough, it had 3 tails. It was nowhere near the size Kyuubi had been, but still it was larger than a workhorse. What's going on? Naruto's contract is with toads, not foxes. Sakura was just as shocked as her master. Shizune was the only one who seemed composed. Then that boy can't possibly be Naruto. Shizune. Tsunade turned around and the woman stood at attention. Come with me. Hi. When they were out of earshot, she turned to her first apprentice and friend, grabbing her by the arm. Did you really think that trick would fool me? There was a crack as she swung the girl around, the wall smashing with her impact. Tsunade-sama, do not address me so familiarly. Release. She sent a surge of chakra through her hand and the illusion was gone. Tsubasa, you guys really need to work on your strategies in the future. Unfortunately, there isn't going to be one for you. Oh, really? Yumi asked as her face was pressed against the rock wall, her lip bleeding. I think you're underestimating me and my team. And with that she shut her eyes, lifted a hand making a sign in front of her face. Art of the Phantom. A moment later she was passing through the Hokage's body and was behind her, a long knife in her hand. I'm a little disappointed. I thought one of the great Sannin would be more of a challenge. And with that she ran a striking blow through the woman's stomach. There was a boom from the stands beyond and Konohamaru looked back up. The Hokage was gone and ninja were rushing toward the noise. Hey, I wouldn't get distracted right about now. Kyo ordered. Even if Konohamaru didn't want to, he had no choice but to look at his opponent. When he did, it was with shock. His eyes. Ninpo Demon Fox Fire Jutsu. Red and orange fire shot from the great fox gaping jaws. Konohamaru's clones dispersed even before the flames came near him. The energy was overpowering as he hit the ground. The fire passed overhead, but it didn't need to hit for him to feel the killer force. Kyo spat the blood from his mouth. That was a warning shot. You can give up now if you want. Again Konohamaru was forced to look at his eyes. They were glowing blood red, the eyes of a demon. This wasn't the thing that shook him though. Naruto ni? The boy shook his head. This is your battle right now, your friend ain't here to help you. I suggest you forfeit if you want to live. This lit a burning fire inside Konohamaru's chest, and he glared, forgetting his previous thoughts. I never give up, that's my ninja way. Kyo bowed his head then and again smirked, showing sharp teeth. Alright then Chibi Gaki, get ready, and with that he launched his attack. The fox ran forward, but the boy didn't bother letting it do the fighting. He leapt with inhuman speed and agility just in front of the Konoha ninja, bringing a red energized hand down on him with no chance of escape. That's when he heard the sound. Kyo's eyes tilted up and his fist missed, sending a shockwave through the earth. Konohamaru kicked him in the jaw, sending him spinning backward. With a snarl he was on his hands and feet like an animal. I'll let you take it from here, kid. The she-fox he had summoned spoke and he nodded. Kitsune were proud creatures and they understood the meaning of battle between two serious adversaries. She disappeared in a flame of red chakra. Kyo could feel the seal on his stomach burn and he growled. The time of the ninja was over, now it was his job to show this brat his real power. Just as he thought this, the Kyuubi's cloak engulfed him, growing 3 separate tails. He felt the bandages burn off of his face, and if he had been in the crowd, he would have seen the color in his hair dissipate to bright gold and rise threateningly. The arena was filled with a new bloodlust. OCRA, Sasuke was pushing through people to get to the arena. The entire atmosphere was in panic. The demon Jinchuriku of Konoha was raising his ugly head. No one wanted to relive what had happened only a half a year ago. Ni-san. Kyo glared at the boy. What was he saying? Who was he talking to? Stupid boy, I'm going to rip you in half. The music was back and it was ringing in his ears. It was opening up a gate deep within him, and Kyo could feel himself banging against the bars of his cage. Konohamaru's eyes burned. What had happened to Naruto Ni? Why was he fighting him? He knew Naruto lost control while under Kyuubi's power, but that hadn't happened for a long time, and this boy was glaring at him was a calculating intelligence. It was as if he were staring at the demon fox himself. Kyo roared, letting go of the chakra surrounding his body, sending the boy backward. The music was releasing him, he was free. Naruto. There was a blur as a dark from past in front of him and Sasuke was staring him down. His Sharingan was burning. He lifted Konohamaru to his feet. Get out of here, inform the Hokage of. That will be enough. A voice above boomed, and Kyo looked up to see Yumi-sensei perched on the highest point of the stadium. She had the Hokage in her grip and he could smell the blood from here. If you do not stop this now, I will kill this woman. Sasuke felt confusion at this statement but didn't have time to dwell. Naruto was coming. Sakura, who was just below the balcony Tsunade was being held hosted at, felt her mind race. She'd gone to the Hokage's ad when the sound of rock smashing came to her ears. But she had been too late, they all had. It was when the killer aura had spread to the upper building that the Tsubasa nin had taken the Hokage outside. The dark-skinned ninja bore down threateningly on the arena, and Sakura saw Naruto. She couldn't help but choke when a hand grabbed her. Hikari had Sakura's arms behind her back, and Soryu was using mirrors she'd summoned to surround the occupants of the booth. Each held a clone that stepped out one after another, leaving the mirrors to shatter. She waved a finger as other ninja tried to intervene. Her clones enclosed around the Hokage and her sensei. When you said we'd know what to do, we didn't think it was an assassination attempt. The original hissed at the older woman. I'm sorry, Soryu. It wasn't supposed to be like this. At this point a new figure was in view and he approached them with light feet. The boy had dark hair and pale skin. He was Jiroko's subordinate Sai. This wasn't a part of the deal. Yumi hissed at the emotionless young man. My master sends his apologies. Your failure at a quick kill has reduced the situation to this. Don't worry, your boy will be spared. He lifted the instrument to his lips and began to play. The fight bellowed changed drastically. Although Sasuke was a skilled Chunin, he could barely keep up with the enhanced speed of Kyuubi's chakra. He would have been impressed with the genin fighting alongside him if they weren't in danger of dying. Konohamaru, though shaken, was holding his own against his self-adopted older brother. No, that's not Naruto. The thing staring at him, that was a demon. Just as Kyo was about to launch another assault, he stopped, looking up toward the Hokage's spectator tower. Sai played the flute freely, and although those below could barely hear it, Kyo could feel it in his ears perfectly. The music was speaking to him again and it was filled with a new power. Ninja art merging of the spirits. Kyo's head exploded in pains and he screamed long and loud. Everything was tearing, reforming, becoming broken and whole again. He was covered in fire. Sasuke bent down to protect the genin from the roars of chakra. What was happening to Naruto? With his Sharingan he could see that the beast's red chakra was merging with the boy's. He was transforming. Kyo held his head as the Ninetales cloak disappeared, leaving a physical form for him. His mind felt beaten and burned as he looked up. Something was swishing behind him and he turned. Tails, 3 of them. He touched his head. His ears, they were pointed and furry. What was happening to him? Naruto? The boy in front of him, that boy from the vision, he was speaking to him. Who are you? It was the last coherent thought before the music was playing in his ears again. Anger burned in his chest and then throughout his body. Looking above, he saw the woman held captive. The music was telling him something, to kill this woman. And as it continued to eat at his mind, he found he wanted to. A moment later, he was passing other ninja and landing right in front of his prey. He licked his teeth and grinned. Kyo-kun? The clones that had been surrounding the Hokage disappeared by the sheer force of power that radiated of the foxboy. Soryu was looking at her teammate in fear. Kyo, can you hear me? He lifted his hand and knocked her aside, licking the blood she left on his fingers. Naruto? Tsunade's voice was weak and he ripped her away from Yumi. It was time for him to have his kill. Naruto, you little baka, put me down. The older woman grunted as he held her high in the air by the neck. His crimson eyes only narrowed at her. He could smell the blood and hear every pump of her heartbeat. Uzumaki Naruto. The voice that entered now was calm and cool. The boy didn't know why he looked up at the name, it was just an automatic response. Across from him, a young man with ginger hair stared at him. A gourd on his back produced sand that seemed to be alive. Gaara, case cage of Sanagakure, was prepared for battle. This one was strong. Kyo smiled, thinking of letting this petty woman go, when the music burned into his mind again. No, he had to kill her, that was all that mattered. Just as Tsunade began to choke harder, something wrapped around his body. It was the boy's sand. He snarled and clawed out, dropping the woman as he was buried alive. Already Tamari and Kankuro had the two younger Tsubasa ninja in lockdown. Yumi was just about to flee when, I don't think so. Haruno Sakura had pulled her dark gloves on and she looked pissed. Yumi might have gulped if she had the chance. This is for Naruto-cha. She sent the woman backwards straight into a wall. Monstrous strength, it rivals that of the Hokages. Yumi moaned as the girl leered over her. Before Sakura could take out any more of her wrath on the woman, a hand grabbed her wrist. Hold on, Sakura. We need her alive if we're going to get any answers, Sasuke said. The Tsubasa ninja were outnumbered and outmatched now. Kyo, still struggling with his bonds, was now being held by a new jutsu. Wood wrapped around his body, digging into his flesh as he fought. Captain Yamato. Sakura breathed in surprise. He was still in his Anbu outfit, and was holding Naruto back with all his strength. Finally the young man stilled and his body drooped. Stupid humans, I'll kill all of you. Kyo's voice broke off as the world went black, the song that had been playing in his ears finally disappearing. This place was dark. The boy without a name sloshed through the water of a wasted dungeon. Where am I? So you've finally come. The voice that spoke was deep and cruel. It would have sent a shiver down his spine if he knew to be afraid. Who's there? And you've even forgotten me? Humans have such pathetically fragile minds. The Kyuubi was growing impatient as he leered behind the bars of his cage. I suppose you don't even remember your own name. I know my name, it's his face fell. The demon fox cackled, his tail swirling around him before the monster boomed furiously. Weak, pathetic child, letting us be used so pettily. I should kill you now. This wasn't possible, but his host was now venerable and demon wasn't above trying to terrify him. The boy shook under the shockwave of sound, falling forward on his hands into the dirty water. He looked up at the demon fox, but his eyes didn't hold fear. Kyuubi stared at the boy. His left eye had become blood red, a mirror to the demon's own. He shuddered behind his cage and then watched as the human took a step forward, putting a hand on one of the bars. The metal faded away, leaving the seal the only thing hanging between them, and he understood. So they had evicted that technique on them. His host stared up at him almost blankly. I'm not afraid of you. Kyuubi lowered his head, looking at Naruto with a large red eye. So you're still under of the flute spell. He didn't even blink. What do you mean? Wake up, ignorant baka, and see what you're doing. I'm disappointed my vessel would be so weak. This put a new fire in the boy and his eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Look around you at this chakra, can you see what is happening? The Kyuubi hissed, pupil shrinking into a small slit. The boy did, and for once his eyes finally snapped back to some kind of coherency. What's happening? He stuttered as the demon's red power surrounded him, mixing into his own chakra and changing it. His hands, they were clawed, and as he looked at his reflection in the great fox eye, he could see the markings on the left side of his face were defined and his eye was glowing red. That's when he remembered being here before, that this is not the way it was supposed to be. The demon fox was meant to be beyond the bars, unable to reach him, enforcing their two separate identities. Yes, boy, very soon now the two of us will become one entity. That's when he felt the whirling power of the Kyuubi no Kitsune as the fox's body became pure chakra, taking hold of him, swallowing him in fire. A new demon was soon to be born. Sakura watched as Naruto's brow creased and he moved his head back and forth. The fox ears on the side of his head twitched back and his three tails twisted. He must be having a nightmare, she thought sadly, looking at her friend whose appearance had changed so much. Sure, he still had the human form of her teammate, but now he was sporting new fox ears and three vibrant red tails. She brushed his hair back gently as he mumbled in his sleep and his eyes snapped open. A moment later his iron grip was on her wrist and his ruby eyes stared into her own. Who are you? His voice was low and dangerous. Sakura's eyes began to burn, forcing back the tears. Naruto? He let her go at the mention of the name, putting a hand to his head. Naruto, whose name was that? Was it his? No, his name was. My name's Kyo. Who are you and what happened to me? He asked, sitting up and swinging his legs over the side of the bed. He mistook her stares as fear when he saw the tails swishing around him. He looked down at his hands. What's happened to me? He thought, looking back up and seeing the leaf insignia on the girl's hite. All his memories from the Chunin exam came racing back, and he reached for a kunai only to find his leg holster gone. With a dark look he glared at the girl and set himself in a taijutsu position. She seemed to snap out of her stupor. Whoa, easy Naruto? Stop calling me that. Who are you? Where's my team? He could feel himself growl. What had happened to him? He didn't understand what was going on. He'd tapped into his yokai chakra like Yumi had taught him, but a transformation had never gone to this extent. The most he'd ever had was two tails and he could always revert back. Now he couldn't seem to grasp any human chakra at all. Just then the door opened to reveal another individual. It was the boy with the dark hair and black eyes he'd been fighting earlier. Kyo felt his ears go back and his tails raise threateningly. Sasuke. Damn, there was that name again. His head felt like it was being pounded from the inside out with a hammer. Naruto, let me help you. Don't touch me, he hissed, surprising himself as he jumped back nimbly into the upper corner of the wall, baring his fangs. The girl looked hurt and he felt his heart soften. Quote ellipsis. You're Leaf Shinobi. Tell me, where's my team? What have you done with Yumi ne, Hikari and Soryu? His voice rose with every word, waiting for them to answer or attack. When they did neither he eyed the window. An escape. Sakura. Sasuke's call was delayed as the boy made it to the opening. Kyo ran through the darkness outside, jumping from building to building. He had to get his bearing and find the others. Landing on the ground below was when he felt his body freeze. He was paralyzed. That's far enough, Naruto. Who the hell are you? He snarled as Shikamaru held him in his shadow possession jutsu. The boy simply sighed, although there was a bit of sweat on his brow. Holding back Naruto was proving harder than usual. How troublesome. Naruto-kun. This voice was shaking and he saw a girl with long dark hair in front of him. She was trembling. Stay back, he hissed, and she cringed. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, she said. A moment later she'd activated her Byakugan, and was jabbing at pressure points on his neck. What? Kyo didn't get the chance to think any further as his mind went black. I want answers now. Tsunade stood over the bind woman. They were in a leaf prison. Yumi hadn't seen any of her students since the attack. She spit at the Hokage's feet. Look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Tsunade growled, bending close to her. What were your intentions in Konoha other than killing me? I know you're responsible behind one of our shinobi's disappearances. This was one of the rare moments that the Hokage didn't break a wall down, or smash a desk in anger. It seemed to make her presence even more terrifying. Yumi just glared. I have nothing to say to you. Really? Inoichi. Tsunade turned her head, and the Yamanaka entered from the shadows, his long hair swaying. He didn't need to be told twice of what the Hokage wanted him to do. Yumi, taking in a deep breath, prepared herself for the most powerful mental battle of her life. It was just like everyone feared. Naruto couldn't recognize any of them. And Sakura felt her heart break to see her friend held prisoner in his own village. As it was now, Anbu were guarding the perimeter of the building. But that was nothing compared to how bad it was inside. Even with the protest from both Sakura and Sasuke, the village elders had their mind set that Naruto would be imprisoned and chained. The only thing the Hokage had been able to manage was keeping him in one of her private interrogation rooms instead of a dark, damp cell. It wasn't long before the boy was awake again, and his piercing red eyes were bearing into Sakura. She felt her heart crack even more as she thought, Naruto never had a look of hate in his eyes like that. Finally the young man spoke. So, what are you going to do with me? Instead of Sakura it was Sasuke who answered. Nothing now. Well Dobi, if you hadn't tried to run off like that you wouldn't be in this mess right now. He had his arms folded, and was speaking in the way he almost always addressed the boy. Cool and somewhat arrogant. It had lessened a bit over the years, but Sasuke could pull the Uchiha ego complex out when he deemed necessary. Naruto only growled at him, then stopped, his eyes narrowing on the boy. Your name is Sasuke, right? Glad to see you remember Dobi. Stop calling me that. There was a flash of the old easily irritated Naruto in his eyes, and Sakura felt a rise of hope until. So what's it been? A genjutsu, some kind of hypnosis? Neither of the Leaf Ninja knew what he was talking about, and he continued. Ever since I got to this village, I've been seeing things, flashes of people. You're the most irritating. He was glaring at Sasuke, who gave his signature half smirk and a humph to boot. A moment later, he had the boy chained to the floor by the shirt collar, lifting him up so they were glaring eye to eye. Sasuke's face was filled with emotions that mostly came out as anger. It was the most feeling Sakura had ever seen him show. You stupid baka, he hissed, looking right into Naruto's eyes. After all we've been through, after all you've done for this village, you think you can just up and forget? His Sharingan activated out of anger, something that hadn't happened in a long time. Sasuke, stop. Shut up Sakura, he shouted, making even her breathing stop. He was glaring at Naruto again. How dare you forget your friends, you bastard. The Kitsune boy's eyes had widened with each word, and he snarled at him. That's enough. Tsunade entered the room, her eyes on the brink of being livid. Sasuke let him go. Now, the Uchiha obliged, shoving the boy away from him in disgust. Naruto. Tsunade turned to the boy in chains and he glared at her. She had to keep from shivering. My name is Kyokitsu, and I want to know what you've done with my friends. No, your name is Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, the most hyperactive, unpredictable ninja of Konoha. The boy blinked. There had been so many times back in Tsubasa that he'd been accused of the same crime. Well, minus the name. How was this woman so familiar with him? His head began to ache again and he shuddered, dropping to the ground on his hands, images flashing through his mind. This is the lady you want to be Hokage. Looks like a drunk to me. If you can learn the Rasengan in 1 week, then I'll consider going back to the village with you. And you can have this. The woman pointed to a cut green stone around her neck. In the memory, Kyo could feel himself grinning. Oh yeah, just you wait, old woman, I'm going to prove to you that I can. Then one day I'm gonna be Hokage. Kyo was fighting someone now, a man with glasses. He'd stepped in front of the Mont's punch, literally taking it head on. 2 clones were at his side, and they were performing the same technique the Gaki Konohamaru had used in their match. Rasengan. One hand is all I'm going to need to take care of you. The Leaf's Hokage kissed him gently on the forehead, and he found her pendant around his neck. Ears, stop. He was trying to hold his head as his chains clanked. I don't understand. You're remembering Naruto. I know it's painful, but don't fight it. Tsunade ordered. Liar. The boy said, looking up, and she was surprised to see tears starting to bead at the corners of his eyes. You're lying. No, I'm not. I would never come from a village that did what yours has to Yumi-sensei. He hissed and the pain began to release. Even Tsunade was shocked to hear these words and her face darkened. They lied to you, Naruto. No. He boomed, scraping at his chains, making Sakura put a hand to her mouth. It was an even bigger shock when Sasuke moved close to her, putting an arm awkwardly around her shoulder. They found me when I had nowhere else to go. They took me and gave me a home and a name. I'd never betray them like that. He was panting by the end of his speech. Tsunade gave him a moment to rage before speaking again. Tell me, Naruto. My name isn't. Very well, Kyokitsu. What do you believe to be the truth? Naruto stared at her like she was testing him, playing with him. Your village's 4th Hokage destroyed half of Tsubasa, taking hundreds of lives, taking away Yumi Nichan's mother. That's all I need to know. His voice grew more powerful with each word, and the others could see the compassion in his eyes. Memories erased or not, that fiery compassion was all Naruto. That can't be true. Sakura started. her voice trembling then got stronger. They lied to you, Naru. No. Tsunade's voice wasn't loud, but it did penetrate the girl's denial and she stopped. The woman turned back to him, her eyes holding a new graveness but still rock hard. It's true, over 18 years ago Minato went to the village hidden in the wings to bring back the first Hokage's taming flute. Many of the ninja there fought to keep it. So you admit Konoha was behind destroying Tsubasa. There was a loud slap as Tsunade's hand whipped across his face, and Kyo became speechless. It wasn't a Tsunade chakra-powered hit either, but it made the boy look at her in shock. She continued to speak. Let me finish. Minato did not go to steal the flute, he was going to bring another ninja back to play it for one specific purpose. Her gaze buried deep into the boy's skull. So that his wife, the previous Jinjuriku of the Kyuubi no Kitsune, could deliver her child without releasing the demon. Do you know who that child was? Kyo of Tsubasa? She stopped letting her words sink in. It was you, the firstborn son of Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina. He stared at her, still not believing what he was hearing. He was the son of the fourth Hokage? That couldn't be true, there was no way. The image of a man with long gold hair that matched his own filled his mind. The man had a hand on his head. It's a parent's duty to have undying faith in their child. I know you can do this, Naruto. He shook his head, that couldn't be real, the fourth had died years ago, and in this image Kyo wasn't much older than he was now. Next he saw a woman with long red hair, he was hugging her tightly. You know the words I say for the two men who've complimented my hair. She smiled at him lovingly. There, I love you. He felt tear well up in his mind. These images, they felt even more real than all the others. Naruto? Tsunade put a hand on his shoulder trying to comfort him, but he wouldn't have it. It's not true, it's not true. It is. You are a ninja who loves his village and would do anything to protect it. I don't believe you. He backed away from her, as if distancing himself would protect him from her words. With this Tsunade nodded to another shinobi standing in the door. He brought in a small TV with a receiver and plugged it into the wall. Kyo watched as he revealed the scene on the screen. Yumi, Hikari, Soryu. He could see them all in their separate cells. He snarled fiercely at the individuals in the room. If you even try to hurt any of them, I swear. The Hokage gave him a look that could still a demon, and in a way it did. Watch. He did as he was told and the screen blinked, now only showing Yumi. She had her head bowed. Yes, it was all set up. Uzumaki Naruto was to be delivered to the village hidden in the wings, after the lotus flute wiped his memories. There he would be trained by our ninja and take on a new identity. Afterward, we were to enter him and two others in the Chunin exams where I was meant to kill the Hokage. If something went wrong, it was set up so that Kyo Naruto would lose control. She spoke these things as if they had already known and was sick of explaining it to them. When asked why, she burned back at them. Because the only way to get my great uncle's flute back was to play by Jiroko rules. At first we didn't understand why he was sending the boy to us. He had the lotus flute, he could easily use it on him in the village whenever he wished. But that wasn't his plan. Her eyes darkened. I can see now that the only reason he wanted Naruto to be there was to humiliate the Hokage. In truth, I don't think he wanted her dead at all. All he needed was to have one of her most trusted ninja turn his back on the village and become an enemy. Naruto being a Jinjuriku would be even more effective in showing how poor her judgment as Hokage was. Tsubasa was ignorant, and in our desperation to get the flute back was used. I'm ashamed of ever being a part of this operation. She looked regretfully away from her questioners, then back up. But I will say this: Konoha wronged my country, and for that one day they will pay. The screen blinked off. Now I'm curious to know who this Jiroko person is. Tsunade said, although she was beginning to get a pretty good idea. Kyo wasn't listening to her. He looked as if his world had been torn apart, and it had. He'd only had the past 6 months of memories, and to find out that all of it was a lie? It was too much. An aura of red filled the room and he shook. What was the truth? These Konoha ninja could just as easily be fooling him. He felt his chest burning and the fire moved to every part of his being. He shouted in pain, Naruto! Sakura couldn't get close to him as Kyuubi's chakra spilled out. She watched as behind him, 3 more tails sprouted and he pulled at his chains. With a roar the metal split and he was free. Stop him! But the Hokage's order couldn't be fulfilled, not even by the Black Ops. Naruto the Kitsune was too fast. and his chakra burned worse than fire with fear. It wasn't long before he escaped the building altogether and disappeared into the night. He passed through the empty village streets, not sure where he was going. Everything in his mind was a mess. He'd been lied to by people he'd come to think of as family. Now he was alone again, with these images flashing in his mind. Some part of him felt he did remember Konoha, while the others refused to believe it, and it wasn't long before he stopped in a place that was distinctly familiar. The Ninja Academy, where children were trained in basic shinobi arts before they became genin. He didn't know why he'd stopped, or even why when he began to move again. It was toward a lone swing hanging from a tree just in front of the building. He took a moment to situate himself on the wood-board saddle style. Finally he sighed, gripping the rope in front of him. Who am I? Iruka was the first to find him, and as he inspected the scene he was reminded of a time the boy had been there often. To Iruka it seemed to signify loneliness. Apparently Naruto felt the same. He approached his former student cautiously. Kyo's ears twitched as he heard the sound of movement. A moment later his red eyes had caught Iruka's. Stay back. It wasn't a load order, but it did stop the teacher in his tracks. Naruto, is that really who I am? He asked, and Iruka flinched at the demonic red in his eyes. Kyo Kyubi? Naruto? I don't know what the truth is anymore. Iruka was silent for a moment. You're Uzumaki Naruto, the boy who dreams to surpass the fourth Hokage. The 6 tails the boy had accumulated were now twisting violently, but he didn't get angry. I remember hatred and fear. People didn't want me. Do you remember your friends? The Kitsune boy looked up at him again, and the force of his defeated stare made Iruka continue. Naruto, you touched so many people's lives and proved to them who you really were. Whether they liked it or not, the sensei couldn't help but give a smile. You've protected this village and the people you loved countless times. I should know because I'm your friend too. Iruka-sensei? Iruka felt a sense of hope, but it was soon dashed away as it seemed Naruto had only been testing the name. Kyo held his head as he felt the hint of memories. He had been at this academy. Iruka-sensei had failed his genin exam. Wait, no, the sensei was protecting him from someone and he was injured. Close your eyes, Naruto? Can I open them yet, sensei? Yes, open your eyes. He did and could now feel the weight of a Hite 8 around his head. Congratulations, you graduate. Oog, his clawed hands dug into his head. So many images. There was the girl with the pink hair again, younger but just as cute. Hey Sakura, why don't we go out for ramen sometime? You not on your life, Naruto. What are you looking at, loser? Iruka-sensei, why is it a great ninja like me is being placed on the same team as Sasuke? Naruto? Iruka reached out to him, but the boy swung his arm out. The Chunin just missed getting clawed. I don't understand. That's because you're afraid. Sasuke appeared in front of them. Iruka hadn't even sensed his presence. How long had the boy been watching? Shut up, Teme. Sasuke smirked and then threw a kunai at him, which he instinctively caught. The Usura Tonkachi I remember wasn't afraid of anything. If you really want to know the truth, then fight me. Kyo growled, shut up, you don't know me. Funny, you're right. I remember a time when neither of us understood each other at all. Sometimes I still don't think I know what your pain really was, but Sasuke's dark eyes seemed to look right into his soul. That doesn't matter so long as Team 7 can laugh together, right? Naruto vaguely remembers saying those words at some point. Team 7? You have until the afternoon to get these bells from me. The one who can't goes without lunch. Just wait, I didn't say start yet. I could go days without eating, weeks even. Here, huh? You're not any use to me if you don't have any energy. You'll just be a liability. Ah, here, just take it, Sakura. Kyo looked up, his eyes glowing a burning red. He couldn't take it anymore. If this guy wanted a fight, he was going to give it to him. Kyo threw the kunai back, receiving a questioning glare. Trust me, Teme, you're going to need it. Both young men prepared themselves. I hope you're ready for this, Naruto. Instead of arguing about the name, the Kitsune just smirked. Speak for yourself. A moment later he was gone and Sasuke was looking back and forth. You're going to have to do better than that. Kyo was behind him, deliberately giving away his position. It's not gonna be any fun if you hold back. Don't worry, I won't. Sasuke activated his Sharingan and tried to keep up with the Fox Boys' inhuman speed. The next thing he knew, they were lodged in battle. Who's holding back now, Baka? Sasuke blocked a punch, then dodged a kick. Kyo growled, falling to his hands and feet like an angry wolf. He was right. Why was he holding back? He had chakra to spare. It was just that. Chidori. Kyo's eyes grew. He'd seen this before. The crackling lighting was coming at him and he jumped out of the way, clean over Sasuke's head. I'll break every bone in your body. He glared, repeating the words in his mind. You couldn't even if you tried. Ear. He came at him, snatching a kunai off the ground. Sasuke dropped the Chidori and blocked with his own, each of them trying to get a hit in. You idiot, what are you doing here? Sasuke accused him. Mirrors and ice. Sasuke was injured with sharp needles. Why I didn't ask you to do it? How should I know? My body just moved on its own. Sasuke. You're not afraid, are you, Naruto? Sasuke shouted, taunt as he jumped back, launching shuriken at him. Kyo blocked them with his tails. Shut up. With that, his tails began to grow, and they struck out at the Uchiha. Sasuke tore through one with a new Chidori before getting wrapped up by another. Kyo dragged him in front of himself so they could face each other. Sasuke, Naruto. Sakura, stay back, this is our fight. Sasuke ordered, feeling Kyuubi's chakra burning him. He hadn't felt this much bloodlust since the seal had almost been completely broken a year ago. Naruto roared at him, and in a moment it was a sound of pain. Chidori had just gone through his chest. His eyes momentarily blue, stared back at Sasuke. This has happened before. Sasuke was looking at him with hard eyes, trying to ignore Sakura's screams. No one could get close to the battle without Naruto's tails striking out. Sasuke hadn't wanted to do it. Plunged Chidori through his best friend's chest for a second time. But it wouldn't be fair to Naruto if he held back, and if this was the only way to get him to remember, then he'd done what he had to. Kyo ripped the boy away from him and threw him, panting. His wound bled as he stared at the Uchiha, his eyes the old Naruto's, deep azure blue. All of you. He was looking around him like he was seeing them for the first time. The memories were still such a blur. All 9 of the previous rookies were there, including Team 10. Kyo felt himself fall to his knees, looking at his bloody hands, and realized it wasn't just his own. He was covered in the blood of his comrades. Kyo looked pleadingly up at them. He fell forward and was suddenly caught in someone's arms. Tears were streaming down his face. There was a soft hand on his cheek and he was looking into deep green eyes. They had tears in them too. Kyo cringed. Please bring Sasuke back. I don't want to have to depend on the two of you anymore. I want to protect the people I care about too. Found you, didn't I, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura, I'm here, Naruto, we all are. I'm so sorry. She let him cry into her shoulder, just holding him close. It's all right, Naruto. Dobi. Sasuke's voice was soft and Naruto felt something metal press into his hand. He blinked a few times. A leaf. His leaf had ate. He gripped it tightly. He was home. Naruto remembered everything, and wondered how he could ever forget. Ba-chan. He tried to put his usual foxy smile back on, but it was hard. He'd betrayed them, almost killed them. Naruto? Tsunade said, searching his eyes. They were back in the interrogation room and Naruto had made himself enter first. Only Iruka, Sasuke, and Sakura came with him as the others waited outside. So, your memories have returned. He bowed his head. I'm sorry. It felt like even if he said it 1,000 times the pain was never going to go away. That's when arms enfolded around him. Tsunade just gripped him, not say a word, but Naruto could smell her tears. He had to force his own from coming back up and pulled away. I want to see Hikari, Soryu, and Yumi-sensei. Any other time Tsunade would have probably protested, but this time she just nodded. Shizune. Yes, milady? Have a group bring the Tsubasa ninja here. But, now. Shizune nodded, though she wasn't too fond of the idea. After Yumi had disguised herself as the Hokage's first apprentice, she had left Shizune knocked out cold in a closet. The girl really didn't want to meet her attacker again. A while later the door to the interrogation room opened, revealing Team Damanagi. They were cuffed and Anbu were paroling their every movement. Soryu was the first to gasp and Naruto saw tears in her eyes as she looked away. Sori-chan, stay away from me, she shouted, still not daring to look at him. He had taken off his Tsubasa headband and had replaced it with Konoha's. Kyo, you traitor, you've been with them all along. Sorry. Stop, Soryu. It was Yumi who ordered it, but the angry tears didn't stop running down her face. This isn't KY Naruto's fault. The leader was meeting her former student's eyes either. So that's your real name, huh? Hikari was the only one who didn't act out of the norm. Fish cake, I think maybe you should have stuck with Kyuubi. He flashed a grin and Naruto felt his heart warm for the boy. It fell when his friend cringed from the pressure of the cuffs. So Kitsune sure's a lot of tails you've got there. The way the boy said it, it was strange, Sakura thought. Almost as if he'd seen it before. I know you've got a lot more power in that form, but don't you think staying like that is overkill? Naruto sighed and smiled, same old Hikari. The kid reminded him a lot of himself. He bonked the boy on the head. Ouch. You idiot, do you think I'd stay this way if I wanted to? It a pain moving with all this in the way. He motioned to the sixth tail and growled. Are you meaning to say this has happened before? Tsunade said sharply, and Naruto, being himself, itched the back of his head awkwardly. Well, sort of, Naruto. Tsunade's voice was very close to being deadly. I've only ever taken this form on a few times. Back when I didn't have any memory, Yumi-sensei taught me how to tap into Kyuubi's energy again. Only it's obviously a bit different. He motioned to himself. But the most I ever got was 2 tails and I could always change back. It's because of the flute. This time it was Yumi who spoke up and Naruto's eyes landed intensely on her. They were switching from blue to red every so often. Yes, I think we've all come to see that. Tsunade growled at her. Tell me, did you really think you could use one of my ninja against me? Tsunade Ba-chan. Naruto's voice was uncharacteristically sharp, then his face softened. He walked forward looking Yumi in the eye. So Kyo, do you hate me? It was my family's fault this happened to you. Yumi wasn't prepared for the sudden pressure around her from Naruto's grip. Something loosened on the back of her hands with a sound of breaking metal and he pulled away. I could never hate you, Yumi-ne. He said, eyes serious. She lifted her uncuffed hand and looked away from him. Naruto. What did? Sakura and Iruka were protesting with him, while Tsunade and Sasuke watched in silent tension. Naruto ignored them. Oh yeah, that's right. You don't like me calling you that in public, right, sensei? He made another awkward gesture and she shouted at him. Stop, just stop it. She hissed and her other 2 students looked stunned. I am not your sensei, you're a ninja of Konoha who Tsubasa freely used as their tool. You mean nothing to me. Naruto grabbed one of her wrists as she struggled, but his face was soft as he looked into her eyes. That may be, but Yumi, I will always consider you my sensei. Her eyes burned and she focused chakra into them to stop tears from spilling. Naruto let her go and went to the other 2. Soon they were both unchained as well. Naruto? Tsunade's voice had become dangerous, but he just said, since when does a Konoha shinobi keep his comrades bound? He asked and she felt her heart drop. It hadn't been long ago that he had been in chains himself. Hikari flexed his fist after the metal had been broken. Thanks man. Anytime, winged Gaki. Ear. That reminded the room of another thing earlier. Wing monster, that is something I'm curious about. That jutsu he used in the match against Moegi. Tsunade said, looking the green-haired boy over, and he flashed a grin. Ha yeah lady, you better watch out, you're looking at the Jinchuriku of Tsubasa. Hikari of the winged spirit. He cocked a thumb at himself and a hand banged on his head. Twice in a row. You baka, don't go saying that. Soryu had lost all her patience by now and was seething. You want the whole world to know you have a demon inside you? Naruto doesn't seem to mind. Hikari tested the name as he rubbed his head. Everyone was looking at the overzealous boy. What? He asked from his sitting position on the ground. You're a Jinchuriku? Sakura asked before he mentor even had the chance. I knew it. Sasuke breathed. You did? At the match I saw your chakra. The only time I've ever seen that power is from Naruto or another Biju host. Sasuke had his cool and collect tone. This kid was way too loud and annoying. Maybe Naruto had rubbed off on him. Oh yeah, about that. That's another thing, Baka, what were you thinking using the yokai's power so soon? Soryu was laying into him again and Yumi grabbed her shoulder. This wasn't a conversation she wanted to have now. I was going to get to that. Hikari. Just a minute, sensei. He whined and then turned to those in the room. He'd never gotten so much attention. At first I thought it was weird too, but then I wasn't questioning it. But I heard this sound. It was really beautiful and I had to use Kinaru's powers. Kinaru? Sakura was the fist to question. It's the name of the demon sealed in Hikari. Naruto answered and turned to him. So you heard it too? Yeah, that's why I went crazy, I couldn't think. Hikari waved his hand erratically. This was one thing Yumi had guessed. feared, and didn't want to discuss among Leaf Shinobi. So that was the first Hokage's taming flute. Tsunade set a finger to her chin. I thought it had been destroyed years ago. Oh, it's still here, and as you can see it's still in top condition. Yumi said grimly, looking at Hikari. I'm sorry that had to happen to you, Hikari. It was a threat I didn't think Jiroko would go through with, not so long as I kept my part of the deal. So you would protect your own, but Naruto was an exception since he was originally from Leaf. Tsunade said coldly, and the woman's eyes bore into her. As long as I could kill you, I was sure they would leave him alone. I didn't expect Kyo to be used so suddenly. I wasn't going to let it happen at all. She stopped herself, breathing heavily, and put a hand to her head. She'd said too much, but she continued softly. After 6 months of taking him and eating with him, training him, do you think I have no heart? She demanded of the Sannin. I never wanted to use you. I hated the idea the whole time, but you were so happy without your memories. I've heard how most Jinchuriku are treated. No one glared at you in Tsubasa or wished anything bad of you. I thought if this could be over cleanly, we could go home and you could stay peacefully. She gripped her fist. Naruto put a hand on one and she looked up, a few tears in her eyes. Yumi, nay, I understand what you're saying. I forgive you and it's okay. He said with one of his smiles, although it was much softer. I may have had some bad memories, but I still found happiness. Being Kyo of Tsubasa is one that I'm going to treasure forever also. Stupid baka, you are too forgiving. This time he had a genuine Naruto fox grin. You know, I think it's one of my better qualities. Alright, now wait a minute. Soryu said, coming out of her brooding silence. You're saying that the lotus flute is here, and that Jiroko's little puppet Sai is using it? I thought I taught my team to be a bit more quick-minded. Yumi rolled her eyes at the girl and she blushed deep red. You hate Klumi, and what the heck is the lotus flute? Hikari asked, irritated that no one was telling him anything. The lotus flute is an instrument my grandfather, the first Hokage, created before the founding of Konoha. Tsunade said, and Yumi flinched. Your grandfather is the one who created the flute? Yumi asked in an over-collective tone. Yes, what of it? It wasn't a very Hokage way of saying something, but Tsunade didn't feel like being polite just yet. Just because Naruto was quick to forgive, didn't mean she was. I'm a descendant of the man who created the lotus flute. He is my great-great-uncle on my mother's side. Tsunade was eyeing the woman up and down. It was quite possible she was telling the truth. It was said that before the Fist had founded Konoha, he had been a part of another shinobi clan very near Tsubasa. With Tsubasa immense spiritual jutsu skills, it would be no surprise if somewhere along the line they were related. Now that you mention it, Yumi-sensei's temper is a lot like. Naruto stopped and sweat dropped as a glaring aura came off the two women. Hey, did I say something? He put his hands out in front of him. Even with the half-burning red eye, he still looked like the unthinking knucklehead he was. The flute's primary ability is to control demons, but there is another factor it can be used for. Yumi ignored him and answered Hikari. The binding of two spirits. It happened a long time ago, and since then the host and his demon are said to have died. Please continue. Tsunade now had her glare back on the woman, who was supposedly her kin. I won't go into the details, but after the flute was created and its founder gone, a military force came into possession of it. After sealing a demon inside of a young host, they slowly used it to train and hone his yokai abilities. But it wasn't enough for them just to have a human with the ability of a demon. The vessel still had human emotions that would hinder his missions. To change this, they proceeded to merge both the yokai and his human counterpart. Permanently. She looked over at Naruto, who, not always the fastest, was getting a pretty good idea of what happened to the said demon host. So he became like me? Yes. And then what? Whoever was in possession of the flute had complete control over him. He became Yuru country's biggest military defense. Naruto had to suppress a glup and his own disgust, but it didn't work. What happened to him afterward? As far as anyone knows, the small human nature still left inside of him lost the will to live. He died before even seeing the second great ninja war. Yumi bowed her head. So these guys can control Naruto? Sakura stuttered, sounding almost like Hinata. No way, there is no way in hell I'm letting anyone control me. Naruto growled, nine tails flaring and his fist tightened. Let them try. They may have gotten me the first two times, but there is no way Uzumaki Naruto, the future Hokage of Konoha, is letting someone else decide his fate. Data Boyo. Calm down Naruto, we don't entirely know what we're up against. Tsunade barked. Oog, he hadn't been back a day, well mentally speaking, and he was already giving her a headache. Ah come on Ba-chan, you're the one who's always saying my head is too thick to get through too. He folded his arms with a grin, then scratched his nose. Let's get that flute back and finish these jerks off for good, I'm ready to. He suddenly stopped, his ears going up and his body going ridged. Naruto? Sasuke said, putting a hand on his shoulder, then pulled back from the buildup of burning chakra. It's the sound. Naruto had a far-off look in his eyes, crimson bleeding around his pupils like some possessed ink. Don't listen to it. Iruka grabbed him, trying to cover his ears. Naruto turned his head to him. Iruka-sensei? His voice was soft and calm, his fangs were growing. They were loosing him. In that moment a violent wave of chakra in tune to Naruto's heartbeat pulsed throughout the room. Iruka and everyone there was thrown by the force. Naruto threw his head back and screamed. It was the sound of an animal in severe pain, a pain that was so great it had never been felt in this life before. The red Arua surrounded him, burning him and powering him. Finally his last three tails exploded and he fell to the floor on all fours. Kyo! Yumi shouted, trying to step to red him, but the beating chakra only pushed her back. He turned his eyes on her and a new fear, one only those who have ever endured the Kyuubi no Kitsune's wrath, suffocated her. The Kyuubi hybrid opened his gaping fanged mouth and roared, sending them all backward with sheer energy. The door slammed open and the other teams were trying to see what was going on, but they were too late. There was no more human thought in Naruto's mind anymore, as the fire of Kyuubi's hate and the song of the lotus flute played in his mind. He only had two meanings now: kill, and find the source of the sound that was haunting him. The door slammed open, revealing the other teams who had been in the hall, the full foche of killing intent hitting them. Naruto fanned his tails out behind him and snarled. Then with a lift of his and he turned and smashed through the wassail. The force was so strong that even this deep in the interrogation unit, it blasted through several walls. Stop him, Tsunade ordered as he escaped through the tunnel. No shinobi wasted any more time. Akamaru, let's go. Kiba jumped on his partner's back as they exited into the open air. If any could keep up with that animal-like speed, the Inuzuka ninja dog could. Either way, they didn't need to smell his trail to follow him. Naruto left building shattered in his wake. Thank goodness we had them all evacuated, Sakura thought as she forced herself to move faster. Soon they were far out of reach of the village. Time stood still and the shinobi stopped. The killing intent, the aura of death, it was gone. Naruto, Sasuke shouted. It's no use. Yumi landed beside him and he sneered at her. What do you mean no use? He's not Naruto anymore, he's not even human, she said coldly, looking forward. And soon, if Jiroko decides it, this village will fall. I don't believe it, Iruka yelled back at her. He isn't capable. Oh, trust me, he is quite capable. And judging by where we came, I'd say that wasn't even a quarter of his power. Tsunade looked absolutely livid, and she was about to order them to spread out when a scream rang through the air. Kiba, Hinata cried, and even Shino looked stunned. In a moment they were gone and everyone else followed. The scene they came on was a gruesome one. Akamaru's body had been thrown back against a tree and his ribs had been broken. Kiba was standing in front of Naruto holding multiple wounds. Wake up, you little twerp. He coughed up blood as the demon kitsune stared at him mercilessly. One of his tails shot out and threw him back, running him through the ground, making a crater. Hinata looked horrified and along with Tsunade raced to his side. His breathing was shallow but he smiled. No way I'm letting a little brat like you beat me, Naruto. I'm still alive. With those last words he passed out. They're here, Shikamaru said as a branch snapped in the woods. All eyes turned on the old bandaged man that stood before them. Danzo, Tsunade bellowed. Jiroko, Yumi hissed between her teeth. You bastard. He only let a single innocent smile touch his lips. Hokage-sama, he spat even with that look on his face. Sai dropped next to him, the flute to his lips, but no sound could be heard. Naruto just stared at him, his tails gradually falling limp. Why isn't there any sound? Ino breathed. There is, only we can't hear it. Shikamaru answered her. I can. Hikari said, his eyes wide and his body shaking. I can hear it too. Don't lose yourself, Hikari, Yumi ordered as Soryu grabbed him by the arm. It's not for me, that song isn't for me, but I understand it. Naruto, his eyes watered and he turned to Danzo. I'll kill you, you monster. Sora Tsubasa no Jitsu. He flew at him and raised his wings throwing darts, but it was no use. Naruto had stepped in front of him and took every blood. Horrified Hikari landed and screamed. Why? Because his only will is to serve me. Danzo spoke again as Naruto pulled the feathers from his body. The wounds sizzled and healed quickly. You slippery piece of scum. I should have known this was all your fault. Tsunade took a step forward and Naruto snarled at her. What have you done to him? Instead, Danzo took the time to address her first words. If you were truly worth of the Hokage title, Tsunade, then yes, you should have known it was I. I'll see you beyond imprisonment for this, Danzo. He laughed, soft as ever. Can't you even say that you want my death? And now do you think that it would be so easy? I've had this plan for a very long time, you see. Oh yeah, clue us in on your bright idea. Sasuke's hand itched to run Chidori through the monk's heart. But a shinobi is patient and waits for the best moment to strike. The late prodigy of the Uchiha clan, and you haven't even guessed. I'm more disappointed with this generation of ninja than when the Sani stared as Genin. He waved a hand. You see, this is the end for all threats that ever lay on the inside of Konoha. And once you are all gone, well then, I'll simply dispose of Naruto, since he has become the biggest threat to us. If Danzo had only knew, when the flute had merged both Naruto and the Kyuubi, their minds had as well. The demon part of Naruto's mind was listening intently and he turned to the man. You think you can control me, mortal? He hissed softly, tails swining around him ominously. Everyone else just gasped or forced themselves to take a step back. So you've still attained your ability to speak. I must give the Kyuubi credit for at least that. You old fool. Naruto Kyuubi's eyes burned and he was in front of the old man in an instant. A second later, Danzo was smashed and thrown against a tree, snapping his can and making his head bleed. Naruto picked him up by the scruff of the neck as the old monk's eye bondages fell away. I'll paint the earth red with your blood. I think not, young demon. Danzo's left eye snapped open to reveal the Sharingan and sent the Kyuubi Kitsune back. Naruto held his head on the ground and roared as his eyes changed to the Sharingan's power. I will not give in, he hissed. Maybe it was the Kyuubi's hatred of being govered over, or Naruto's always burning will that allowed him to still speak. It was probably both. Either way, he wouldn't be in control long. Sai, why aren't you playing? Danzo hissed at the emotionless boy. No one else could have been able to tell, but he was watching the demon intensely. I'm your commanding officer, Sai, now do as I say. The pale boy's eyes slipped to the flute in his hands. He had created this, but that wasn't what bothered him. Our duty is to the village, killing the Hokage and her finest shinobi. How is that a projection for Konoha? He turned his dark eyes on the old man. Your emotions are getting in the way of this, Sai. I thought I could have more faith in you. Faith, is that not an emotion? You tell us we shouldn't hold to such things, but your emotions have done nothing but bring disorder and fear. His look was still blank as he gripped the flute. Sai had not made a decision for himself in years, hadn't let himself think as an individual. But this demon, this boy, was changing everything. I will not go against my duty to protect Konoha, and I will not allow you to kill the Hokage. He turned his cold black gaze on the man and took a step forward, walking back to the other group of shinobi. Most of them were stunned. Anyone who knew about Root had the knowledge that they were squeezed of any last feeling, choice, or emotion. Even in this state, Naruto had changed yet another person's life. Hiroki Irashi. Danzo snailed and two Root operatives fell from the trees. What are you doing? He sneered as they gave away their positions. Both Anbu removed their masks, showing two familiar grim faces. Gai-sensei. Lee burst. Kakashi-sensei. Sasuke said coolly. We've been monitoring your movements for a long time now, Danzo. Looks like you finally bit off more than you could chew. Kakashi's eye smile was evident, but his cold-blooded fury was also creating a deadly mix. About time you too. Tsunade scolded. But Danzo wasn't out of tricks yet. Kyuubi, he ordered, and suddenly one of Naruto's tails involuntarily snapped out, wrapping around the flute and pulling it back to Danzo. The old man brought it to his lip and blew. The crowd had to hold their ears as that piercing note vibrated the air. Naruto did the same, but it felt like his were bleeding from the brain outward. Danzo's will of death was shooting through him, and he turned, sweeping a hand of chakra at his friends. Once again they were tossed like rags. Naruto Kyuubi turned on Danzo and the old man looked pleased. Finish them, he ordered. The boy didn't move. Kill them. No. This time when the demon did look up, it was with the left eye burning red and the right blue. You think that you can control us? Kyuubi and me? In a blur he was inches from the man. The Kyuubi doesn't take orders from anyone, and neither do I. He slashed his claws against the man. It was Kyuubi's turn to speak. You had better be grateful, mortal. If not for the boy's will, I would kill you slowly. Stop. This time it was Yumi who screamed, and she raced past the nine tails of kunai in her hand. A moment later she had come down on Danzo's heart, but not before he had another trick up his sleeve. Yumi coughed blood as the summoned katana perked through her body, but she looked into the old mont's eyes and knew she had won. I protect my students with my life, and you are not worthy to die by his hand. With these words she fell to the side, Danzo breathing his last breath. Naruto Kyuubi turned to the woman who had died for them, the blue eye now streaming with tears of shock. Yumi ne, sensei, he shouted, dropping to the ground next to her and propping her back against a tree. Kyo, Naruto, she said, reaching for his face as he cried and the Kyuubi continued to watch. Then his eyes closed and he fell forward beside her unmoving. Naruto. Sakura was next to him and with the help of others she rolled him over. His breathing was shallow but he was still alive. Tsunade was with her a moment later searching for any injuries with her medical just Su. He'll live, she breathed. No, be quiet you. Tsunade didn't bellow or bark at the young bleeding woman as they caught each other's gaze. Let me finish, you stubborn old witch. She coughed up blood again. I meant to say he will not live like this. Hand me the flute. She raised a hand gestured to the object on the ground only a few feet away. Sasuke was the one to pick it up. Wait, if Naruto trusts her, and she is willing to lay down her life for him, then she has my trust as well. He said. All the fifth could do is nod her head. Very well. Sasuke handed the flute to the woman, but before she could put it to her lips Soryu and Hikari were beside her. We won't let you die. Soryu sobbed, putting glowing hands around the wound. Yumi-sensei, you can't leave us. Hikari gripped the earth. He reminded Yumi of a grieving angel with the wings still on his back. She raised her hand and brought it down on his head. It barely made a thud. Enough already. You always whine when you don't get your way, she gasped, knowing her lung was filling with blood. She could only suppress it with her chakra for so long. I doubt even the great Sannin Tsunade can save me from this cursed blade. Tsunade didn't look away but knew it was true. The sword Danzo had used would never let those stabbed by it heal, and with the place and severity of the wound there was no chance to even try. You are strong, shinobi, protect our village and forgive the leaf. Our hatred has been rotting away for too long. These were her last wishes as she raised the flute to her lips and blew. This time everyone could hear the music as it filled the air. It was sweet and sad, the last song of someone who would be put to rest shortly. Everyone watched transfixed as Naruto began to change, loosing his tails and forming human ears and features. Soon he was just a boy covered in blood with now wounds on the ground. Sasuke lifted him with Sakura, as she supported his head, holding him close. His face was utterly at peace. It's done. Yumi dropped the flute and it rolled on the ground. She gave into the last sight of the light in this world, ready to pass to another in the next. Her lip raised in a smile that lasted even after death. Those present felt no shame as they let their tears flow. Naruto woke to a bright white ceiling and turned his head. The hospital? He's awake. Soryu and Sakura jumped to their feet and were by him in an instant. They had bandages on the wounds from the Kyuubi's chakra, though it was nothing serious. Sakura-chan, Sori-chan. Naruto blinked a few times, then brought his hand up to his face. With a start he sat up in bed and staring at his arm and hand, then upward. He could see his reflection in the glass set in the door. I'm back to normal. It's about time. You've been asleep for almost a week, Sasuke said from his seat at the wall. He was in rougher shape than the two girls but had ignored protest to stay in his bed, and instead waited for Naruto to wake up. Well, you know me? Naruto grinned, rubbing his messy blonde hair, then his face fell. Where's Hikari and Yumi-sensei? This question made the room still, and he felt a chill run down his back. Just then the door opened. Well, I see I seem to have been forgotten. Kakashi stepped in, clicking the door shut. Sorry Kakashi-sensei. Well, if you hadn't gone off on that secret mission for Lady Tsunade for months on end, maybe he wouldn't have replaced you. Sakura tried to joke and then the conversation came back around to Naruto's question. Nirofumi Hikari is traveling back from Tsubasa. He had to deliver information to the Tsukige. Kakashi, though not in the room at the time, had been listening. He was a Jonin after all. You had Hikari go? Naruto looked over at Soryu a bit surprised. He was the one in well enough condition. Both you and him tend to heal faster than the rest of us. She said unsmiling. He's also capable of traveling much faster than anyone else thanks to his Sora's Tsubasa no Jutsu. And what about Yumi-sensei? Again there was that silence and finally Kakashi spoke for them. Sorade no Yumi passed away 5 days ago. Naruto's eyes widened and for a moment he just stared into space. That was right. She'd been stabbed through the chest. The blade Danzo used was cursed. There was no way to save her. Naruto? Soryu put a hand on his shoulder and he snapped out of it. Some tears fell from his eye. I'm sorry Soryu-san, he said, feeling the guilt. He hadn't been able to protect her, hadn't been able to save her. Soryu, who had been quiet, just raised a hand and he wondered if she would push him away. Instead she grabbed his ear and gave a small tug. You think Sensei didn't know what she was doing? Her death was honorable and if you grieve over not being able to stop it, then you're only desecrating her memory. She was trying to smirk at the beginning but then her eyes filled with tears and she sobbed. The truth was she had the very same thoughts and was trying to convince herself of this as well. Naruto hugged her. You're right, then we should smile for her sake, since she would have wanted that. He said as he pulled away and forced a grin. Though his eyes were still sad, Naruto had a lifetime of putting on a happy face when there was nothing but tears. Soryu did the same. It was because of her, wasn't it, that I changed back? Naruto said softly. I heard the most beautiful and sad music. Yes, having the flute played by one with a direct bloodline to the fist truly creates a powerful jutsu. Tsunade entered. She'd heard that Naruto had woken up. Ba-chan, where's the flute now? It is safe. I have my finest Anbu and ninja guarding over it for now. Naruto sighed and leaned back onto his pillow. That's good. He glanced over at Kakashi, who surprisingly looked like he wanted to say something but was holding back. Hey, Kakashi-sensei, you look like you've swallowed something nasty. What's up? Kakashi shook himself and made his face less readable, though his eye never curved to show his signature masked smile. I feel partially responsible for this, Naruto, and for that I can only say I'm sorry. You? What did you have to do with anything? Naruto had his usual confused look on his face. He didn't know how much it relieved his friends that it was back. You might have noticed the mission Guy and I were on for Lady Hokage. We were meant to dive deep into Root's headquarters and find whatever we could on Danzo. In the end, when we found out what had happened to you, we were too deeply undercover and couldn't warn the Tsunade-sama. For a moment there was a look of surprise on Naruto's face. So you knew? It wasn't until 3 months after your disappearance that we learned about it. There was a droop in Kakashi's voice when Naruto just flashed a grin. You worry so much, Sensei. If it wasn't for what happened, we'd never have found out about Danzo. I'm just sorry about what happened to the village. He looked embarrassed thinking of all the toppled buildings and the giant hole he'd put in the interrogation unit. By the way, those expenses are going to be coming out of your mission pay. Tsunade said, eyebrow twitching a bit. We just had this place rebuilt. There was a simultaneous groan from Team 7. Hey, whatever happened to that guy, Sai? Naruto looked back up at his teacher, who now had his usual half-smile on his face. He's currently explaining his situation with Danzo and the other members of Root to one of my operatives. Tsunade answered, then cocked her head at Kakashi once again. He still had that eye smile on his face. It seems a certain knucklehead ninja changed his view on a few things. Kakashi said. Huh, what did I do? Well, other than the few missions the Tsukige had you meet him, nothing. But I did get to know Sai a bit during our mission. He found out about us, but surprisingly kept our secret. He was mostly interested in Konoha's Jinchuriku, and since you were on my team I told him a bit about you. At first he was undeciding of whose side he was on. In the end, it seems his heart still wanted what was best for the village. Naruto grinned. I don't really get how that has to do with me, but thanks Kakashi-sensei. I was thinking about asking the Hokage to place him on our team for a time. Kakashi looked slyly her way. The kid has exceptional skills. What he lacks is human interaction outside of Root. Tsunade gave a nod. We'll see. My lord Tsukij? Otome bowed as she entered the room. The funeral will be starting soon. Thank you Otome-san, he said back still to her. He was looking out on the village. I will be there shortly. They were all dressed in black, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Konohamaru, Sai, and Kakashi, as they visited the memorial of Soride no Yumi. After a few words from her father and when most had said their tearful goodbyes, Naruto stepped forward setting a white lily on Yumi's burial stone. You will always be my sensei? Yumi nay. He wiped his eyes with an arm and stood to face his teams from both the Leaf and Wing village. Eyes were being dried and the ninja now pointed their gaze to the future. Team Soridano, the Tsukij spoke and they turned around. Standing with him was Otome whose face, though dim, looked a little less weary. The Tsukij looked pained as he glanced between them, and then stopped on Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto and Ninja of Konoha, I want to apologize for all the pain this old mont's ambitions have put you through. He bowed his head. There was a long silence when Naruto approached him. There was a slight snicker from Otemo, which made the Tsukij look up to see that the boy was bowing to him. Tsukij-sama, I can't speak for the village but you have more than my forgiveness. It was an honor to work under you for the time that you took me in. He looked up and then grinned with a thumbs up. And once I'm Hokage, you can be sure that Konoha will be your strongest allies. His speech should have shocked the other Leaf Nin, but in a way it didn't. Naruto had been with these people for longer than they had, and as he said, he wouldn't bow for just anybody. If the Tsukij had earned his respect then that was enough for them. Hey, if that's the case then the same goes for me when I'm Hokage too. Konohamaru grinned, thumbing his nose. And as the grandson of the third Hokage I can represent the village in saying, it's all good between us. Some like Sakura sweat dropped at his very laid-back statement, but let it slide. He definitely picked up that behavior from Naruto. Hey, if the squirt gets to be Hokage then I'm going to be the next Tsukij someday. Then we can all keep our promises. Hikari pumped his fist high and Soryu hit him on the top of his head. Ouch, Sori-chan, that hurt. He rubbed the sore spot with a pout. The Kage smiled and gave a small smile, then a TS King sound before turning back to Naruto. After all we've done to you, you will make a fine leader one day. Uzumaki Naruto, Kyokitsu the ninja fox, of both Tsubasa and Konohagakure. Naruto grinned embarrassedly at the title, rubbing the back of his head as the Tsukij continued. I've learned much from the sacrifice of my daughter's death. She has come to an understanding of your people and respects your village very much. No, now so do I. You can be sure that Tsubasa will be willing to do whatever we can if Konoha is ever in need. The Hokage sends her best regards for your daughter, especially since you have such a close family relation. Kakashi said earnestly and the Tsukij chuckled. Yes, I'd wondered if there were any more of our kin back in the Hidden Leaf. If she is anything like her grandfather then she must be a great leader. He then turned to Sai who had been quiet this whole time. I was told you had also taken a different path than the one Danzo set for you. I have to say I'm surprised. My allegiance is to the Konoha, never to one individual. Sai said simply in his blank tone, making Naruto stick his lip out and his eyes close in his brooding fox way. What? The pale boy asked him and suddenly the blonde was behind him with a sneaky expression. You know what your problem is, Sai, you need to loosen up. Naruto grabbed the corners of the other boy's mouth and pulled, forcing him to smile. Sai spun around and punched him backward. Hey, calm and can't you take a joke? Naruto hollered indignantly as Sasuke pushed him away after he fell back on him. Ha, watch it, Dobi. Naruto gritted his teeth, all his serious manners from before completely gone. He was back to his loud, overexcited self. Sai gave him his blankest stare. Even if I found anything funny, I'm sure no one would enjoy you tugging on their face. Ah, you're just being a girly boy. Funny to hear that coming from you. Do you even support any equidme? The last part was muffled by Sakura's hand to Sai's face. She was pretty sure what was coming next, and knew it wasn't appropriate, especially at a funeral. Haha, such jokers. She waved a hand, sweat dropping all the time. Sai was mumbling something to her and she moved her hand away. Thank, ugly? Sakura's temple throbbed with a vein mark. What did you call me? Kakashi just sighed at his team, and waved a dismissive hand as Sakura went to pulverize their new recruit. Well, thank you for the hospitality, Tsukij-sama. I think it's high time that we are leaving now. I wouldn't want any of my team being the next to destroy Tsubasa. Cha, what did you say, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura rounded on him and he waved a hand of departure. Ya nay. With that he was gone, already headed back to Konoha. Oh no, you don't, Shanaru. Sakura was after him in an instant, with both Sai and Konohamaru following. Sasuke just gave his signature, HMPH, and said, come on Dobi. In another instant he was gone too, and Naruto turned to his old team. He had a bit of a sad look on his face before he grinned wide. Guess that leaves me. Sayonara, Soryu-chan, Hikari, Tsukiji-san. He stopped just before turning around and glanced back at the gravestone. Yumi ne sensei. A moment later he was gone and the Tsubasa shinobi were just watching the wind blow through the trees. Soryu gave a small smile. Sayonara Naruto-kun.
That's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share and do comments.